On the ball well, that last one to right center. I mean, the line drive to second, the line drive to third. So that's a positive, and we're going to need it. I mean, you look at the games that we've been dropping, we're in every game, just not enough runs across the board. Man, all we can do is continue to work. These guys are getting after it. It's just not coming together just yet offensively. Yeah.
That's what it sounded like yesterday after the game. Ollie Marmol taking up for his offense, saying, hey, guys are starting to feel a little bit better. There is some underlying metrics to support that. Unfortunately, the offense continues to scuffle with Alex and T-Bone on BK. Audio courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest. Alex, as of today, the Cardinals as a team are batting .219. It's not what you want. Their on-base percentage is below 300. Really not what you want. Their slugging percentage is worse. This is a stat from Derek Gould of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. The Cardinals as a team are slugging worse than the Brewers are getting on base. Again, the Brewers get on base at a better clip than the Cardinals have as a slugging percentage. That's awful. That's no good. That's very bad. There's a reason for that, Alex. The only player in the Cardinals starting lineup yesterday that finished the day with a slugging percentage above 400, which is below league average. The Cardinals had one player in their lineup with a slugging percentage above 400, and it was Wilson Contreras. They have now scored 3 or fewer runs in National League leading 19 times this season. Benjamin Hockman wrote the column that I was going to talk about on the air today, basically. There is no person in St. Louis that has more pressure on them over the next week or two than Turner Ward. I am somebody that rarely, and I mean rarely, talks about the hitting coach. I don't think the position is as important as many do. I think the position at this point, because there are so many people outside of the club that are working with their swing, that are working with their mechanics, all these different things, I think it's become what T-Bone says about NHL coaches. You're a motivational speaker. You're a therapist. You're trying to make sure that people are in a good place mentally and physically as often as humanly possible. Well, at some point, you got to offer something that's different to the Cardinals fan base, man. And right now, given what the struggles are as a team offensively, this is not just one player going through it. It's basically everybody. Yo, if you don't get right against the White Sox, I think there's going to have to be some kind of a change that is made. You can't change the players. This is what you bet on. You said these guys are good enough. You made that very clear in the offseason by not trading them for the pitching that you so desperately craved. You believe in this core group of players. All right, well, eventually you got to go to, okay, who's supporting them? What is the group of individuals that is helping to make them the best versions of themselves? You believe in Ollie Marmol? You gave him a contract extension. You just promoted your assistant hitting coach. Eventually you got to turn to the hitting coach and say, maybe we should make a change here. I'm not saying you do it now. You give him another series or two. You could not have better timing as a hitting coach to see the Chicago White Sox. You've got to mash these dudes. They're terrible. They're the worst team in Major League Baseball. Alex, nobody on this team has more pressure on them going into this weekend than Turner Ward.
No, you're right. I mean, look, I'm with you. I always feel like when people start complaining about firing coaches that we're putting a Band-Aid over a laceration. Like you're sitting here talking about a bigger problem being the actual roster, but you're right. You can't do anything about the roster. You can't trade everybody and bring in a whole new crop of players, so you have to go with what's easy, and that's firing a hitting coach. I mean, we've talked to so many different hitting coaches, and they've all told us, yeah, you're motivational speakers, but your job, what you are being paid for, is when individuals go into a rut, like every single player that's not named Mason Wynn and Wilson Contreras is on this team, is to get them out of that rut. Whether you're a motivational speaker, whether you got to give them therapy, or maybe you need to tell them to put the bats in the bed with them and kiss them goodnight before they go to sleep. You have to get them out of their ruts. And the fact that we are now a month in to a season, over a month into a season, and your offense is the worst, one of the worst in Major League Baseball, there's nobody else that is going to be pointed at that reasonably can have something done to it than Turner Ward. Now, with that all being said, I don't think they're going to do it. After hearing John Mozeliak talk, I don't think they're going to fire anybody. I think they're just going to sit here and keep preaching, well, we just got to be patient with everything because everything's going to be all fine. That's going to be the mindset, I think, until this team's going to be playing .500 baseball at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I kind of agree with I'd be shocked if they make a move because last year, you know, who could have been the perfect fall guy was Dusty Blake. Would it change anything? No, but change needed to happen. Change needed to happen for change's sake, and they're getting to that point with Turner Ward as well.
Can I explain why there's a difference, though? Last year, you knew the staff wasn't good enough. Like, we could all look at the pitching staff and be like, yeah, I see why they're keeping Dusty Blake around. What the hell was he supposed to do with this collection of players? That is not the case position player-wise.
Some of those guys look pretty good now on other teams.
Fair. This position player group should be better. Even if you're down on the Cardinals, even if you hate the collection of players that they have, they should be a lot better offensively than this. And so I can look at Turner Ward right now and say, dude, what are you doing? Like, what is happening that is leading to these players struggling the way that they are? So that would be my one pushback to what you say there.
And my pushback to that would be what we just said. He's a motivational speaker. Like, a lot of guys, a lot of their training isn't with Turner Ward in the offseason. It's with guys on the outside. Like, hell, maybe Arnado should fire his driveline baseball hitting coach that he works with in the offseason. Like, you need to give something to the fan base at some point, and that's why my counter to last year was, dude, they had to do something last year, and they didn't. They preached patience, and they just went down with the ship, and that's where they're at this year again. Now, it's not as bad as it was last year. I was going to
say, they're not even bad as last year, which is why I even more believe they're not going to fire somebody.
Offensively, though, they're as bad offensively right now in terms of the rankings as they were last year pitching.
Yeah, but your front office is going to keep saying, well, these guys, exactly what you're saying. Well, these guys can't be this bad all season. It's a bad month.
Fair. I think there's some truth to that. But eventually, you've got to say, okay, we can't change the players. We believe in the players. They've had a bad month. Why is our coaching staff not getting the best out of them? And what do we need to do in order to get more out of them? And if the decision for the team is, well, we got to get a new coach in here to be able to get more out of them. And T-Bone, if you're right, and if we're right, and the hitting coach isn't that big of a deal, well, then why does it matter if you change it? Like, Turner Ward might be the greatest dude in the world. He understands that there's an occupational hazard to being a hitting coach. You're going to get fired. We are eventually going to be fired on this station. Eventually we will.
Whoa.
It's an occupational hazard.
Whoa.
I knew that when I said as a 15-year-old, hey, I want to get into sports media. At some point, we will be fired.
Speak for yourself. I love this job.
That's the way this goes, dude. Randy Carricker is a unicorn. He hasn't been fired. He's amazing. That what he has done in this industry, I guess he was technically a KMOX, but he said it's the biggest blessing of his career. But like to be at one station as long as Randy Carricker has is amazing. Nobody lasts very long as a hitting coach in Major League Baseball, dude, because you're the first guy that people point to and say, position ain't that important. We believe in our manager. We believe in our hitters. Guess what we're going to change? The hitting coach.
Yeah, well, and if we are going down the, like, they are the motivational speaker, like, you know, let's just put a therapist into this situation. If you don't mesh well with your therapist, you're going to look for a new one. So if the hitting coach isn't meshing well with the roster, even if he's a motivational speaker, if Turner Ward is screaming at every one of these dudes, like, we need to change this, and they don't care, then you do have to move on from that.
And I would also add this, Alex. I don't think Craig Berube was a bad hockey coach.
No, he's actually really good. You'll find that out with the next team that he signs with.
If he ends up in Toronto, I think they're going to have some success.
Huh?
Until 5 years later.
No, it'll be next year.
Then he'll get fired again because that's how it works.
No, it doesn't. God, come on.
I don't think Turner Ward's a bad hitting coach. I think he's probably pretty good at his job, honestly. But it ain't working. And so if it's not working and you know this is an occupational hazard, and I feel bad for him, dude, because, like, he probably shouldn't lose his job over this, but this is the reality of working in pro sports in that specific position. So, yeah, there's pressure on him, and this is the results of it.
And you can't deny, and it happens in baseball, it happens in hockey. Hell, you saw it with the Blues and the new coach bump. They're probably going to take off the moment they fire Turner Ward. Yeah. Like, it just happens. Why?
And it might be totally unrelated.
Yeah, it probably is unrelated, but there is always something about to be said because people will be asked in that locker room the moment, if they have to do this, hey, what do you think of Turner Ward being fired? Well, it sucks because you know who got him fired? Us.
Yep.
And that is the motivation that all of a sudden, boom, they start to click.
Who's the Jordan Kyrou in that clubhouse that says, not my coach anymore, not my problem? Nolan Arenado. Totally.
That's Nolan's guy. Nolan and Goldie are the reason why he's here. Especially
the reason why he's fired too,
for sure. But that's why I don't think they'll say that. I don't think the Cardinals have that player.
Someone will.
I don't think so.
Fermin.
In the past, it might have been like Tyler O'Neill. He might have been that guy.
Sure.
Tyler O'Neill is saying
Tommy
it right
Pham
now.
Definitely would have said that. 100% would have said something like that.
But see, I go back to what my initial statement was. We're talking about this, and I think we all agree, like, it's going to have to happen. Listen to John Mozeliak speak.
Okay, so let's do this.
Oh, what'd he say?
Mo talked yesterday
off.
to Jim the Cat Hayes pregame, and he was asked about the offense. I'm sure he's frustrated.
How frustrating is it?
Not that frustrating to me. I mean, there's always ebb and flows of a season, and sometimes guys get off to hot starts and then cool off. Sometimes guys get off to slow starts and then get hot. I mean, in the end, you typically produce the types of numbers that you find on the back of your baseball card. So I still feel like we are encouraged at where we're going and where we're going to be. And, obviously our division's very competitive, but we're right in there.
And can we go back to last year and just find when the pitching was so bad and just clip John talking about the pitching, because I feel like he said the exact same thing when the pitching sucked in the first month of the season. But this is why Turner Ward's not going to get fired. This is why they're not going to fire anybody, because the back of the baseball card tells you what you need to know, and it'll be back to what it typically is.
And I generally agree with that.
Yeah, okay. Until he gets shut out by the White Sox this weekend.
Yeah, and then I won't anymore. But those 3 games.
But they got 3 hits in all 3 games against the Oakland Athletics. You just got beat 2 out of 3 against the Tigers.
Hey, they're a little better team than we give them credit for.
They are. They're 2.5 games out of the first place. So the Oakland Athletics are better than you. Think about what I just said. They are better than you.
Are they?
Yes.
Are we sure?
No, they're not.
On paper, they're not.
I don't know what to do with this, man, because you guys know I'm generally a guy that is patient with offense, especially because it slumps. It does. It goes up and down and up. That is so tone deaf. That is so unbelievably tone deaf to say when you are going through a slump like this through 31 games. Guys, we're almost 20% of the way through the season.
Oakland's 15-17. The Cardinals are 14-17.
Woof.
Technically, they're better than you thus far. I don't believe that will be the case over the course of the season. I just don't.
So you want to be patient?
I do. But I think it's really tone deaf for your president of baseball operations to come out and say, when your team is last in Major League Baseball in home runs so far, I'm not frustrated. Why? Why aren't you frustrated? Because I'm sure as bleep frustrated. I'm really frustrated watching this team right now because they shouldn't be this bad. You have too many good hitters in that lineup to be this bad offensively, dude.
Oakland's slugging 359. The Cardinals are slugging 338.
There is nobody worse than you at slugging. Nobody. You're the worst.
No. The White Sox are worse, man.
They had hitting home runs than you.
But those don't matter.
They do. They do matter.
Sorry. I'm going to let you cook right now.
And so when I look at this team and I say to myself, all right, I'm sure people involved are also frustrated. They've got it. No, you know the old saying, nobody's more frustrated than we are? Apparently not true. Apparently I am much more frustrated than the guy that essentially runs the organization. How? After the last year and a half, are we hearing the exact same lines? How? Explain it to me, Alex. Make it make sense to me.
I can't. This is
I think
Mo.
Mo gets a lot more crap. I am lightheaded as hell right now. I think Mo gets a lot more crap than he has deserved.
You need more meat in your diet, man.
Probably.
Pass out to get a ton of views.
It's overnight oats. Just didn't do it for me this morning. How is he not? Just say the line, dude. I'm frustrated. That's it. That's all you got to offer to fans. But when you do this, fans hear it and say to themselves, he just doesn't get it. And I would like to push back against fans. I would love to say, he does get it. He understands. How can I do that when that's what John Mozeliak is saying publicly? Because he's telling you, I don't understand your criticism. I think it's unfair. I think it's wildly inaccurate. What about it exactly, John Mozeliak, is wildly inaccurate right now? Your team has the fewest home runs in Major League Baseball. You're off to one of the worst starts through the month of April.
Your best prospect is in AAA.
In team history, Nolan Gorman is slugging Alex's weight right now.
Whoa.
Nolan Arenado, by the way, yeah, sure, he's hitting. He's getting on base in terms of singles. Dude, that is not what you're paid $35 million a year to do. I don't understand any of it.
Hold up.
Doesn't make sense.
What is Nolan Gorman slugging right now? I
Don't worry
am not 352 pounds.
Wow.
What the hell is wrong
Talk
with
about
you?
tone deaf, man.
Yikes, man.
It's an exaggeration. I'm
I would
baffled.
say so.
Well,
You shouldn't be baffled. You get mad at me when I get pre-mad at the Cardinals, and I'm sitting here with these same expectations that I have every season. That's why. We had it last week. Why are people frustrated, or why do you hate the Cardinals? That's why.
So he said in that answer, we go through slumps. There's that. Do you guys know when the last time was that the Cardinals at this point in the season have this bad of a slugging percentage?
1947.
No, not that bad. What would you guess?
2004?
no, because
That offense is coming back, baby.
I would say somewhere in the
Cardinals
90s.
No, 2007. It's
year
once
after
again referencing the worst season that the Cardinals have had in the last 20 years, not named 2023. Like, the last year, every time we would point to a season, hey, the last time the Cardinals were this bad pitching, 2007. This year, the last time the Cardinals were this bad hitting, 2007. The Cardinals had 341 total bases in their first 31 games of the season in 2007. You guys know how many total bases they have so far this year?
What was the number you said?
341 through the first 31 games of the 2007 season.
Total bases?
We'll go 300.
No, I'll say 295.
342. It's the same offense as 2007.
Wow.
It's the same bleeping offense. I don't get it, dude.
least that team had
I
more.
don't understand it. Everything had to change after 2007. They made wholesale sweeping changes within the organization. And if this doesn't get corrected this season, the same thing will be true. He's Alex, that's T-Bone, and I'm BK. Coming up next, yesterday the Fast Lane asked an interesting question. Should we have seen this coming? My honest-to-God answer is no, and I don't think there was anything the Cardinals could have done about it to avoid it. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. Got some numbers for you guys.
Oh, BK does numbers.
Got mad in the last segment. Didn't really support myself with a lot of data. Decided to go ahead and find that during the break.
About to put on his Pokemon gloves right now.
Cardinals are batting .220 as a team right now. If you're looking, not
Oakland's
even a
worse than
nerdy
that.
you're the worst. If you're looking not even at the nerdy numbers, but, batting average, which some people say doesn't matter anymore. I'm not one of those people. I think it's really important.
What's more important, batting average or home runs?
Home runs.
I like Will Bacon.
If you're looking, though, at just batting average, just, hey, how often are you getting hits? It's pretty important, especially when your on-base percentage is as bad as the Cardinals is. The Cardinals are batting .220 as a team. I will give you the entire lists of seasons through 31 games in which they were worse. 1918, 1917, 1914, 1908, end of list.
I was totally right when I said 100 years.
In the last 100 years of Cardinals baseball, you have seen through 31 games the singular worst batting average. So congratulations, Cardinal fans. Last year, you saw the worst pitching staff through 31 games in 100 years. And this year, the worst batting average through the first 31 games. We've really seen it all as a fan base
Who do
here
you
in
think
St.
the
Louis.
best hitter on the 1917 Cardinals team was?
Let's go 1918 because that's the
1918?
most recent.
Okay.
There's got to be some good names on
All
this
right,
one.
hold on. I'm going to pull this one up for you guys.
Bob Fisher.
Oh.
Hey, Rogers Hornsby was on that team.
Bob
He was 22
Fisher was
years
great.
old that year and finished the season batting .281. He was your best player, of course. Dude, not many other household names on this team, to say the least.
Baird. Not a good day for him.
Bill Doak, Red Ames,
Bruno
Gene
Bretzel.
Packard, Jackie May,
Red Smith.
Red Smith. That's a
good one.
1918
That's
type
it.
of
Bobby
We
Wallace.
need to get that name back.
Bobby Wallace at the
Walter
time.
Cruz.
Bobby Wallace was 44 years old when he was playing in 1918. My God, man.
I mean, Goldie looks like he's 44 years old
Okay,
right now.
chill.
So,
Relax.
Herman.
Whoa, am I
oh my
wrong?
God, guys.
Am I wrong?
Best name available right here. A .221 batting average, so he was bad. Herman Bronke.
Not great.
He's
So,
a stud.
again, if you missed the number, the Cardinals are batting .220 as a team. That is the worst batting average through 31 games for a Cardinals team since 1918. So in the past 100 years, the worst batting average at this point in the season that you have seen by any Cardinals team. If you're alive, it's the worst batting average you've ever seen for a Cardinals team.
If you're alive, props to you.
Okay. The Fast Lane asked yesterday, speaking of the offense, should we have seen this coming? Alex, I want to take a listen to what they had to say, and then I want to get your reaction on the other side.
Yeah, I really didn't think the offense was going to be a problem.
You didn't watch them last year?
I did, but Kerry, in all honesty, I thought that was kind of an outlier. I didn't think the offense would be the main source of the problems. I just didn't. Because the pitching area was such a problem.
You needed pitching, and you don't know what you're going to get out of a 37-year-old at some point. So I really don't know what to tell you on that. Did I predict that the offense would be one of the worst in Major League Baseball? No. Should I have? I guess so.
I didn't see this coming at all. And I think, and this is no disrespect to Kerry, I promise you, but I think the people that say they did see it coming are being a little bit disingenuous. Because the number that everybody cites is, guys, last year the Cardinals were like 20th in runs scored. And that's true. Like, I can't dispute the fact that by the end of the season, the numbers offensively for the Cardinals were not good. But what I can dispute is that that's a lot of inclusion of August and September. That's 2 months of the season. That's like 30% or so of the Cardinals season last year. And at that point in time, the Cardinals had waved the white flag. Goldie was barely playing. Arenado got shut down by the end of the year. Gorman was dealing with the back issues. Donovan was literally having his elbow at a procedure because it blew up on him. They had Mason Wynn in the lineup every day. They had a lot of guys that they weren't major leaguers. And so, yes, the offense fell apart, but through July 31st, the Cardinals were a top 7 offense in the vast majority of statistical categories. And that's the offense that they have this year. Those are the players that are in the lineup this season. We mentioned it during the offseason, Alex. Your top 7 players that we expected to be batting 1 through 7, they spent, I believe it was 7 games in the lineup together the entirety of the 2023 season. So, yeah, I expected the offense to be pretty good. And if they're honest, I think all Cardinals expected the offense to be pretty good this year. So I think it's a bit unfair to say that we saw this coming. I don't think that anybody could have reasonably seen this coming. And that's what makes it so shocking and so frustrating to watch right now on a day in, day out basis.
Yeah, I think when you say you saw it coming, you look at pre-All-Star break and post-All-Star break, but like you said, the numbers are deceiving when you look at what that roster was in the second half. And I think last year in the second half, because the Cardinals were so bad and the offense just completely struggled, everybody was getting injured, I kind of feel like we fell victim to that the same way we fell victim to the Blues offense being good in the second half last year, to where they were out of it, they traded everybody away, and we thought Verano was going to be a 30-goal scorer. We're like, oh, well, this guy's good. You saw the offense so porous last year in the second half and thinking, well, this is terrible, but you were relying on all of these dudes that weren't going to be in your lineup on a daily basis. I did not see this coming because we focused so much on pitching, and I wonder if we fell victim to focusing so much on the pitching that we didn't focus on the offensive side of, the second year for Jordan Walker, the third year of Nolan Gorman, and having to make those adjustments, and another year older for Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado. I didn't know the offense was going to be this bad. But, I mean, you kind of assumed it wasn't going to live up to the expectations that you had there. I didn't think it was going to be one of the best in Major League Baseball. But you're right, BK. To say that you saw it coming is just disingenuous because this team is built on offense. And you expect the back of the baseball cards and all of the hype with these prospects and young players to live up to those expectations.
Yeah, I didn't see this coming in the offseason, but I will say this. Leaving spring training, there were serious concerns because I just went back and looked to make sure that my memory served me right. Third worst OPS, fourth worst slug through spring training. And that was, and look, I get it. The regulars aren't playing every at-bat. But guys, remember, they had that long streak without a home run, and we kind of chalked it up to, okay.
The wind.
Yeah, the wind at Jupiter. Jupiter is a very hard ballpark to hit in. Now we're another month into this. Guys, I just don't think they're going to slug this season. Now, did I see that coming? No. I honestly did not because, to your point on, Walker, I thought Walker was ready for that next step. I thought Gorman was ready for that next step. At some point you knew Goldschmidt was probably going to have one of those kind of fall-off-the-table moments, but you just don't predict that. You just assume Paul Goldschmidt's going to be the guy that continues to, take the dip in the fountain of youth and continue to be Paul Goldschmidt. And, well, you know what? He's the one guy that maybe you could point to and say, well, he had the lowest slugging percentage of his career. Maybe he's on the back end of his career, but I still wouldn't have planned on that. Arenado's shocking to me. I cannot believe Arenado's been this bad and not hitting for this power. So, no, I did not see it. But I think what we've seen now, though, is with spring training, with the first month of the season, guys, they are not a good offensive team, and this is probably not going to turn around to the effect that we thought coming into the season.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line to get involved in the show. You can check us out on YouTube as well, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. That is where the graveyard chat is off and running today, as always. This one comes from the 314. BK must have had his red glasses on. He couldn't see that the offense wasn't going to be terrible like the rest of us. We saw the signs. We saw that the pitching staff was so bad last year that it was able to mask how inconsistent the offense was. Fair. There were times last year where we got frustrated that they weren't producing with runners in scoring position, even when they had their regulars out there. And June, July. I remember early last season there were some moments of that as well. So that's a more than reasonable response. But even if we were going to say, hey, they're going to be inconsistent offensively, fair. You could have expected that. I think that would have been reasonable. This isn't inconsistent. This is terrible. You have one of the, in any metric you want to look at, 5 worst offenses in Major League Baseball. If you saw that coming, more power to you. I did not. I don't know how anybody could have expected them to be a top 5 worst offense in the sport through the month of April. And to prepare for that, you would have had to do things that would have left you so unbelievably light on the pitching side of things that it would have been better to just tear down your roster. And so I don't know what you do. I don't know what they could have done. I don't think you could have prepared for this. You had to bet on Goldie and Arenado to rebound from where they were at the end of last season. You had to bet on Jordan Walker. What he showed you the second half of last year was real. You had to bet on Nolan Gorman, who's one of the best power-hitting prospects in Major League Baseball, to hit for power. And you had to bet on Lars Nootbaar being just a good player. He didn't need to come in and be elite. Just be good. Just be what you have been over the last couple of seasons. And the truth is, he's been terrible so far this year. I don't think there was anything they could have done to prepare for this. And so, to your point, T-Bone, on what happens if they don't slug, dude, then the season's over. I'm not ready to jump on board of that yet. I think they can still get back to it. I think there's some signs that Gorman's getting back to it. I think there's some signs that Goldie is figuring things out. Over his past 10 games, he's slugging .500. Over his past 10 games, Nolan Gorman is hitting the ball incredibly hard, but not getting any results yet. I think that's going to come. I think he's getting closer. Arenado's the one that I'm 100% concerned about now. The batting average is there. The slugging percentage has no signs of life whatsoever. There's nothing there except for yesterday. If you want to point to yesterday's game as the one that's going to get him going, you can. Now, it didn't end up resulting in anything, but he did hit the ball hard a couple of times, and it could have been a couple of doubles for him. He needs to get going. This team cannot be what it wants to be without him and Goldie and Gorman hitting for power this year. They can't get there.
That's just the part that I'm skeptical with, because I feel like we've said that already like 3 different times for certain players of like, oh, that's the game that's going to get him going. Nolan Arenado, that home run he hit against the Diamondbacks, you're like, oh, that's what's going to get him going, and it didn't. You know, Paul Goldschmidt, you felt like when he broke out of that slump and hit the home run, that's what's going to get him going. I'm at the point now where I look at these guys and I feel like they are exactly like the team is overall. You get a couple of hot streaks and then you just die off real quick.
And one last text on this from the 314. Guys, more than 40% of the Cardinals' runs last year came from home runs. To assume that you're going to be able to repeat that is asinine, and to consistently buy into and believe the hype that the Cardinals keep feeding us is madness. About 40% is what you want to be. The Cardinals were overly reliant. They were at like 48% last year. To assume that that could have continued, totally agree. Not sustainable. And unfortunately, like the problem was last year, they didn't make, I know everybody laughs at it, but like the productive outs that they're doing this year, they didn't have those a season ago. And so they had to rely exclusively on home runs. And it was a problem. That's why the offense was so inconsistent. What my hope is that they would come into this season, incorporate some of those productive outs, move runners over more often, and still have that power that they had a year ago. This would be a good offense if they hit for the power that they had last year, the same, not adding anything more, just the same power that they did a year ago, while including the productive outs, moving the base runners over, that kind of stuff that we've seen this year. If they did that, we'd be talking about a really good team right now because they have the pitching. They haven't done it. They haven't been able to continue the home runs, and so they're exclusively now reliant on the productive outs and moving runners over, playing small ball all the time. You can't win that way over 162. Postseason, you can find a way because the games are so low scoring. Right now, no siree. That is not a way to be able to win baseball games over 162. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll get to questions and answers, but coming up next, how do you construct your team in the Western Conference right now to beat the 4 teams that are, I would say, dominant over the last couple of seasons? Vegas, Colorado, Dallas, and Edmonton. Is there a common denominator there? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Tara Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Soliga Heating and Cooling. The Cardinals fell to the Detroit Tigers yesterday as they dropped 2 of 3 to Detroit. They are off today before they start a 3-game set home against the Chicago White Sox tomorrow night. 7:15 will be first pitch as Sonny Gray will get the start for St. Louis. This Sports Center update is brought to you by Soliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American senior heating and air conditioning dealer.
All right, so right now, I think the 4 best teams in the Western Conference over the last couple of seasons, and when you're including what their future outlook is, would be the 4 teams that the Blues need to try to find a way to construct their roster to beat. And those 4 teams are Vegas, Colorado, Dallas, and Edmonton, Alex. Now, Vegas and Dallas, one of them can move on to the next round, not both, but one of them will. Colorado, Edmonton, both already have advanced to the second round of the playoffs. So you'll see at least 3 of those 4 in the second round this year, as you have for many in recent seasons. When I think, Alex, about if you're a AFC team right now in the NFL, there's one team you're constructing your roster to beat, and that's Kansas City. You got to find a way to get to Patrick Mahomes. You got to make his life difficult, and you got to score a bunch of points against them. That's the way you construct your roster to beat the Chiefs. That's the hope, at least. If you're looking right now at the NBA, you're trying to dethrone the Denver Nuggets, and you've got to find a way, okay, what can we do to match up with that roster? When you look at the NHL and the Western Conference right now, it's very different builds. Vegas, Dallas, they're kind of built one way. Colorado, Edmonton, they're built a very different way. If you're the Blues, you're Doug Armstrong right now, and you're trying to construct your roster to win in this conference long term, Alex, what's the goal? What do you need to do to beat those teams?
Well, there's 2 of them. One of them you've accomplished. The other you need to accomplish. The one that you have is goaltending. That's how you beat these teams. Winnipeg just lost because their goaltender wasn't as good as Colorado's offense. Jordan Binnington's numbers against the Colorado Avalanche are actually really good these last couple of years. Now, the record's not great because the team in front of him hasn't been able to complete it, but last season alone, he saw an average of 34 shots a game against Colorado and had a .903 save percentage. In the last 3 years, he's had a .912 save percentage against the Colorado Avalanche. Dallas, who right now is looking like the superior team to Vegas, well, Jordan Binnington's numbers this last year against Dallas was .947 save percentage, .929 against Edmonton, .931 against Vegas. So the 4 teams that you're talking about being elite in the Western Conference, to me, to beat them, you've got to have the better goaltender. And I believe you are set in that area going into next season. Better than Georgiev, I'd argue better than Jake Ottinger, better than Skinner, and better than whomever Vegas is going to put in there. The one that you need to accomplish, and the area that I think Winnipeg is learning how to accomplish, is you need size. And I'm not talking size on one area of the ice, size everywhere. Because the reason Winnipeg struggled against Colorado is because their smaller guys out-muscled Winnipeg's guys. You're going to have to get stronger when you go up against these types of teams. And I think the Blues accomplished that against Dallas. I think they accomplished that against Edmonton. Vegas and Colorado were the 2 teams that at least they somewhat struggled against. But because you've got goaltending in terms of Binnington and Hofer, I feel like you're already ahead of the curve when it comes to competing with the best in the West.
I think we're seeing right now, man, like size is such an important thing to have in your lineup in the NHL. I think there was a point in time, we talked about it with Doug Armstrong, where he said, hey, I think the league is trending more towards speed. It's more towards puck movement. And those things are important. Don't get me wrong. You can't just set them to the side and not care about it at all. But if you're telling me, okay, you can construct a team that trends more in one direction over the other. Would you rather be a team that is reliant on speed or a team that is reliant on size? I would lean towards size, because when you get into the postseason, everything gets gummed down to more of a grinding halt than it is during the regular season. And I thought that Army was right. I thought that based on what we see with Edmonton and Colorado, I thought we would see more of that style of hockey that came into the league. I thought it was going to take the league by storm and everybody was going to try to emulate it. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, those teams, more often than not, end up losing to teams like Vegas that add that jam that Chris Kerber is always talking about to their lineup at the deadline every single season. What does Tampa Bay every year seem to add to their lineup? Physicality. Yep. Bottom 6 forwards. When Colorado won the Stanley Cup, what did they do? They added Lehkonen. They added size and jam, whatever you want to call it, physicality to that middle six and bottom six forwards. Hell, they added size to their defensive core that year at the trade deadline as well. I think we're learning the importance of size despite the league continuing to trend a little bit more towards speed. It's about speed with size.
Yeah.
Can't be speed over size.
And I think it's important to put context into this. When we say size, we're not talking about 6'6", 6'7" guys. Like, I think that's a very important element to their game. But the reason Winnipeg is talking about size right now, Murat Ates, who covers the Winnipeg Jets for The Athletic, put this in his article, kind of summing up their season. You got beat by guys that are 6 foot in Nathan McKinnon. You got beat by guys that are 5'11" in Arturi Lehkonen, Cale Makar, who is at 6 foot, 187 pounds. But those guys play like they're 250 pounds on the puck. We're not talking just big guys. We're talking heavy guys.
Also, some of those guys, specifically Cale Makar, and we'll get into this more later, he's an exception.
Yeah. It's Quinn Hughes as well.
You can't build your roster toward exceptions.
Right.
You have to just realize that guy is a special talent.
But when you watch these teams play, you forget that they're 6 foot, 187 pounds because they play to the degree that you can't get the puck away from them. I always go back to Jaden Schwartz. Jaden Schwartz was not a big guy, but you could not get the puck off of Jaden Schwartz's stick. David Perron, not a big guy, but he would play so heavy that you couldn't get the puck away from him. And we talk now about guys like a Jordan Kyrou or guys like a Kasperi Kapanen this season that get shoved off the puck with one cross-check. You have to play to a level that it is impossible to get the puck off of your stick. I think Jake Neighbors played this way. I think Zach Bolduc showed a little of that.
Yeah.
And he told us that the offseason goal was to add more strength.
The Blues, a couple of years ago, did the same thing with Robert Thomas. Robert
look at him
Thomas,
now.
I thought in that playoff series that we saw him against Minnesota and then again against Colorado, I thought he looked like he was a little small.
Yeah, he got shoved off the puck.
He looked like the game became a little too physical for him. And I think he realized that in that moment. He said, I got to do something to improve here. If this is going to be what the postseason is like for me, I need to get better. And I think he has. I think over the past couple of seasons, he's added a little bit more physicality to his game, and he's become a better player in the regular season. And I think it will pay significant dividends for him in the postseason whenever the Blues do get back. But as we're thinking long-term about, hey, what are the roster moves for the Blues? How do they get back to being in contention? And what does that influence in terms of their offseason decision-making? I think this should always be the North Star for them. How do we get not overly big, overly physical, and then too slow to be able to keep up with this team? How do we add a little bit more of that physicality, a little bit more of that that playoff type of performance, that mentality to our lineup? That should be what they're looking for this offseason.
We always talk, and we talked this season about how, they can't forecheck. They put the puck in, and the puck comes back out. That's what we're talking about. You have to be able to put the puck in and keep it in the zone for a good 45 seconds because of your size.
Alex, we do have a question on the text line. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. We'll get to questions and answers on the other side. This will be one of them. Somebody said, Alex, what do you make of the Blues adding all of these players from Sweden to two-way contracts right now? I want to get your thoughts on that. We'll get to that in questions and answers and so many more of yours here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. Let's start with this, Alex, from the 573. If you're going on a Cardinals road trip, where are you going when you factor in the stadium, the city, and the team that you would be watching? Which road trip would you be most likely to go on? Who would you want to see the Cardinals play against?
Jeez. The cruddy part is they kind of stink, but I've always wanted to go to Fenway and see that stadium.
It's really cool. I've been there when they aren't playing baseball. But it was cool.
That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What are you doing, man?
It was October.
I mean, honestly, right now, it would be to go see the Cardinals and Dodgers play at Chavez Ravine. That would be the number one destination because it's an exciting team, and I'm going to L.A., although I've heard L.A.'s not fun sometimes, but
I liked it.
That would be the number one destination that I would say.
Good food scene. Like
San Francisco would be another one because I've heard that. And Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's better than the Cardinals now.
Pittsburgh was awesome.
Pittsburgh's a great.
I've heard that city's incredible.
I cannot recommend it enough. If you have an opportunity to go to Pittsburgh and go to a game there, you absolutely should. It feels very intimate, too. Compared to being at Busch Stadium, the stadium feels small.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that in a bad way. Like, you have a really good atmosphere at those games. But it's a very different experience than watching a game at Busch Stadium.
You need to try and culminate it, too, like at the same time as like hockey season to where you could do a baseball game and a hockey game because that would be fun. Because I've heard the Pittsburgh Penguins environment is like second to none at a lot of places.
It feels more like watching a game at City Park. That would be the way that I would describe it. It's like City Park, you feel like you're in a smaller environment, but it feels big still in a weird way. That's how I felt watching a game at Pittsburgh. If I wasn't going to say the Dodgers, which would be my answer, I'll go San Diego. Seeing a game at that stadium while their team is still pretty good.
Just wants to see Mike Schilt. Can't get away from him, can you?
I would love to go to that park specifically. That'd be another one.
I really want to go to the three that you said, L.A., San Fran, and San Diego. Those three I really want to go to. One that I would do, like I've already been to the park, but I wouldn't mind going back, and it's a good team that would factor into this. I don't know if they go there this year or not. I don't think they do. Baltimore would be a great spot to catch a game, especially while they are good, because that is a beautiful stadium as well.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Alex from the 314, somebody asked you about the Swedish players that the Blues have added to the roster over the past few days. Feels like if you played in the Swedish Hockey League and have any connection whatsoever, like you've literally talked to Alex Steen at any point in your life.
Oh, yeah.
You're now a St. Louis Blue. Kind of similar to what happened with Sean McVay. If you've talked to Sean McVay in your life, you became an NHL head coach at some point over the last 5 years. The Blues are doing that, but with the Steen connection. What do you make of them adding all of these different players?
Yeah, look, Steen retired from the NHL, and it was like there was a ton of Swedes on the team, and then now there's no Swedes, so he's trying to get it back to the Swedish type of team. A couple of these guys, I mean, they were drafted players. Like Otto Stenberg, Theo Lindstein, and Simone Robertson. Like, Robertson's going to be an AHL player next year. I think Lindstein and Stenberg are going to be playing back in the Swedish Hockey League, Doug said. The one that stuck out to me was this Marcus Silvegaard, and we talked a little bit about him, but to me, this is the Blues taking swings in different areas. We always talk about the draft picks that they have and kids coming from college or junior hockey. You're signing a undrafted player who was a goal scorer in the Swedish Hockey League and one of the better goal scorers in the Swedish Hockey League to be depth. And like you look at the AHL team last year, you had maybe three guys that you called up and you said, yeah, they could be a part of our NHL roster. And two of them are going to be on the NHL roster next year in Bolduc and Dean. I think this is a low-risk, high-reward for Doug Armstrong in bringing in this type of Swedish player. Guy who can play a Kasperi Kapanen type of role and maybe get 15 goals for you in the NHL. But if he stinks, he's $800,000, and he's the American Hockey League who provides depth for you. This is basically the equivalent of what you did with Kasperi Kapanen and Jakub Vrana, but now you're paying $800,000 rather than $2 or $3 million.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Guys, do you think that Nootbaar will ever live up to the hype and the potential, or will the Cardinals once again keep a player until he has no value remaining? I think one thing that needs to get figured out with Lars Nootbaar is why he has so many struggles early on in a season. This is not an isolated incident this year. This has been the case for him, I think, every season, basically, since becoming a big leaguer. He gets off to these slow starts and then in the second half figures it out. His career thus far as a Cardinal, first half of the season, .695 OPS. Second half of the season, .840 OPS. Slugging percentage is the biggest difference between the two. 370 slugging percentage in the first half, 470 slugging percentage in the second half. Why is that the case? What's going on there? Why is he able to adjust his swing midway through the season to become more of a power hitter? Why does it take so long for him to find that power stroke? That's something that he probably needs to figure out. But will he reach that ceiling for himself? I think so. I think that the ceiling, though, might be a slightly above league average hitter, more resembling what we saw from him last year.
Is he focused too much on power, though?
I don't think so.
Because, like, is it a little bit of the Carpenter syndrome where you're trying to be so much of a power hitter that you get away what the success actually could be for you?
I mean, it's possible, but I don't know that would be something that I would criticize Newt for. I think early on he's on the ground too often. And we saw that last year where it was just how many ground outs to second base can you see before you find a way to do something different? If he ends up being a guy that's about 15% above league average offensively, plays good defense, adds value on the bases, that's a really nice player. You like to have that player in your lineup, gets on base a lot. I think that's probably what Lars Nootbaar is going to be long term, and it's up to you to decide if that's living up to the hype.
I always thought with the way they talked, especially after his second half in, 22, that they thought they had themselves like a 260 hitter that gets on base and hits 20 homers. And I just don't know if he's going to be that guy.
Probably more of a 15 home run guy. And it's possible Brendan Donovan has more power long term than Lars Nootbaar.
And if that's the case, I don't think he reaches his ceiling, but I think he ends up being a good player. And that's not somebody that like ever loses their value, but it's also a player that never has enough value to move on from.
It's Brandon Nimmo.
Yeah,
that's what he is. He's
exactly.
probably going to be Brandon Nimmo long term, and that's a good player. But he can't be one of your three best players in your lineup. He's an accent piece as opposed to the thing that you're building something around. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes or so, I think we might be witnessing the beginning of what the next version of college sports will look like. We'll explain what that means coming up here in just a little bit. But next, I want to hear from you guys via the mic drop feature on the 101 ESPN app. How are you feeling about the Cardinals after the first month of the season, specifically the offense? And I want to hear from you on this topic as well. If the Cardinals had the same record right now, but it was the pitching that was struggling as opposed to the offense, if it was basically last year all over again, pitching stinks, offense is still pretty good, would you feel better or worse right now? Same results ultimately, but going about it in a different way. We'll discuss that, give you our thoughts here from you guys as well via the mic drop feature coming up next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's VK, and it's time for you to unlock your inner champion. You've been pushing it off, and it's time to do exactly what you need to do. Victory Men's Health is the place to do it. If you woke up today and said, I just don't have the same energy that I did 3, 5, 7, maybe 10 years ago, they can help you with that potentially over at Victory Men's Health. You can check out all of their great locations across the St. Louis area. They've got 4 of them: O'Fallon, Illinois, O'Fallon, Missouri, Town and Country, and the newest one is open up now in Sunset Hills. Go to the one closest to you, or just check them out, victorymenshealth.com today. If it's erectile dysfunction issues that you're dealing with, they can potentially help you out there. If you're just looking to lose a little bit of weight, get yourself back in good shape, they can help you out with that as well. Low testosterone is something else they can do. Whatever it is that you're dealing with right now, you go in, they're going to have a lab draw kit available for you, and it's going to find out not just your low testosterone like other places. It'll find out what your micronutrient levels are. There's something that's changing up your hormone balances. They can help you out with that over at Victory Men's Health. So check them out today, one of their 4 great locations, or at victorymenshealth.com.
you can like reshuffle your bad hand when you're sitting there playing poker as many times as you want. You still have deuce nine offsuit. The aces got to be aces, right? And hopefully they got a couple of those up their sleeve. And look, their names are Goldie and Arenado.
That was Brad Thompson on the Fast Lane yesterday talking about the lineup construction. Alex, this is something that we do a lot in St. Louis. We talk about the lineup. Hey, move him there, move him down, move him up. That'll be the thing that ends up getting everything to click into place. The truth is right now, you just don't have enough good hitters. Doesn't matter where you hit them. You could bat Mason Wynn at the top of the order. You could go Lars Nootbaar or Brendan Donovan second. Maybe you decide to go Contreras 3, move Gorman down, move Goldie down. Doesn't matter.
Somebody should tell Turner Ward so that they could get gooder.
Eventually, you just need guys that can hit. And right now, it doesn't matter the way that you construct the lineup. They're not hitting. So whoever you have at the top of the order, good chance they're not going to be good enough for you. That brings us to a question that I wanted to ask you, and I want to hear from our listeners as well. Mic Drop features on the 101 ESPN app. How would you feel if the result was the same? They had the exact same record today, but instead of the offense being what's struggling, it was the pitching. Because I personally, for the 2024 season, let's focus right now on the immediate future, right? For this year, I feel better this year at this point than I did at this point last year, because there was no reason to believe that pitching was going to get better. No reason. There was nothing you could point to be like, hey, look, the underlying metrics are good. Nope, wasn't there. There was nothing that you could point to and be like, hey, look, their recent history. Nope, there wasn't anything there. They had a lot of dudes that weren't very good now and in the past. So there was every reason to believe this is not getting better. They don't have the pitching, and there's nowhere that it's coming from. This year, there are some things that I can point to and say, yeah, the offense is bad right now, but look at all of their histories. It should be better, and baseball would suggest that it will be better. Now, it doesn't feel that way right now because I mentioned the underlying numbers. All of those are also bad for the Cardinals. They're not hitting the ball hard. Their expected slugging percentage is down. Their expected bat, there is nothing that I can point to and say, yeah, but look, Alex, the nerdy numbers tell you that they're just getting unlucky right now. Nope, they're not getting unlucky. They're bad. But their history, the back of the baseball cards, would suggest that it will be better. So that's what I personally latch on to and say, I think that that's going to be closer to what they are by the end of the season. It's just so incredibly frustrating to watch when you're going through an extended slump like this. So I feel more optimistic today than I did at this point last year. Alex, how would you feel if it was reversed?
So you put the scenario of the immediate, now. I would feel better because, frankly, pitching was awful. And if you're looking at it, you say, hey, the offense is going to get it figured out. So for this season and this season alone, if you reversed the situation, I would feel much better about the situation that the Cardinals are in right now, because if you're worried about pitching, that is a problem that's not just going to get better. Offensively, you can tweak some things and work. Pitching, if it's going to be bad. My concern is not just for the now, big picture, because I think if you reverse the situation, big picture, I'd be singing, because moving forward, you can fix pitching. You know what the problem is. You haven't drafted and developed the pitching. You can go out and sign pitchers like you had success.
There's no investment there.
There's no investment. You can fix that. The future is very alarming with this scenario right now, because the core that is supposed to be carrying this team out of this kind of iffy window and start getting back to winning, all of them are struggling. So the scenario that we're living in right now, alarm bells are going off, because Walker's not the guy you thought he was. Gorman's not the guy you thought he was. Nootbaar's not the guy you thought he was. Donovan's not the guy you thought he was. There's two guys that are the guys you thought they were, and it's Mason Wynn and Wilson Contreras. That is very concerning if you reverse those situations.
I think that's fair. And that's you're talking about the actual situation.
Yeah, that's the big picture.
Long term, this makes me way more concerned.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't get figured out and you're stuck with this version of Nolan Arenado for the next few seasons,
you're screwed.
Boy, that is a problem for the Cardinals in the way that they construct their roster, because he is eating $35 million per year on your roster. That's basically for the Cardinals what Torrey Krug is for the Blues. Yeah, he's a usable player. He has value, whether it's here or elsewhere, but it is not the role that you paid him $6.5 million a year to be. If the Blues had, maybe the Jordan Kyrou would be an example of this. That would be for the Cardinals what like Nolan Gorman is. Where you're like, oh boy, he's a useful player, but this is not what we expected it to be. And you look at Jordan Walker, who's struggling right now. I think he's going to get it figured out, guys. I do. But Lars Nootbaar is not yet what they projected him to be this year. Even Brendan Donovan is not what he was supposed to be this year. Like, all of these guys, if this is what it's going to be for the 2024 season, you better hope it's a one-off. Because if it's not, there's no pivot. This is your group. This is who you're developing. This is who you built your roster around for now and for the future. So if we're going big picture, this is way more alarming than if the pitching was struggling right now and you were still hitting. Because like you said, you got a couple of one-year deals on your pitching staff right now that you could get out of it after the end of the season if you needed to. You've got some pitching that at least appears in the minor leagues to be developing in a way that maybe they can help you next year. That would be easier, theoretically speaking, to turn over after the season. You can't turn over this lineup, dude. You're pot committed. You're all in with this group of players. So that's why it's more concerning long term. Immediately, though, like just for if we hone in once again for the 2024 season, what do you feel better about if the pitching was struggling or what we currently have? I feel better about this because I was worried about the pitching coming into the season, and it's been better than I expected it to be. Your bullpen looks really good, man. And I still believe I'm clinging to that hope that
Just
this
like
lineup will eventually get back on track. I want to hear from you guys. The mic drop features on the 101 ESPN app. Would you feel better if the roles were reversed? Same ultimate record. You're feeling right now 14-17, 31 games through the season. But the pitching sucks instead of the offense. How do you feel in that scenario? Let's hear from Matt via the mic drop feature.
I don't think it really matters if it's pitching or offense hitting as to why we're not winning. I think it just matters that we're not winning. I wouldn't be mad any more or less if it were this group or this group. I'm just mad that we're not winning, and I feel like it all boils down to roster construction and the willingness to pay for the talent that we need to get the W's. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just as mad as I am last year. I mean, cool, pitching's slightly better, but at the end of the day, we're not winning this year and we're not winning last year.
It's not slightly better. It is significantly better. But see, here's the part that, and I understand where he's coming from because, like, yeah, you're not winning, which is why it's frustrating. You don't care what the result is as long as it's looking good. I think the frustrating part with what's taking place now compared to reversing the roles is if you reversed it to last year, we would still be just sitting here saying, like, you've got a great team. You're not investing into it. The problem and the frustrating part with it now is there was no fixing this. There was no going out and spending money to be better. You've spent the money to be better. You spent it on the pitchers. You've got your number one. You've got your depth that provide you innings. The offense stinks. And go back and look through the free agency that was out there. There was not one person you were signing and throwing money to offensively that was going to make you better. There was no trades that was going to make you better offensively. That's where the frustration comes from. So I would disagree with, like, it doesn't matter we're winning or we're losing. That's where the frustration lies. You're still winning games. You're still 3 games below 500. But even that pisses me off because you're only scoring 4 runs against the Oakland Athletics.
Through 31 games last year, they were 10-21. This was roughly the point in the season where we knew last year that it was over. There was no coming back from that. I think this is roughly when we had, because this is the LA Angels series, so I think this is right around when we reached out to Brad Ausmus and said, hey,
you guys did this.
You guys were in Houston when you were terrible to start out the season, and you guys figured it out. Do you think this team can figure it out? And he said, yeah, look at your pitching. And we all looked around. I remember the feeling when he said that. He's like, yeah, look at your pitching. You guys are going to get it figured out. We looked around and said, guys, look at the pitching. It's not good.
He lied through his teeth.
He realizes how bad the pitching was at that point in the year. I think he was still assuming, hey, Waino's going to be Waino. Michaelis is going to be 2 years ago version of Michaelis, and it wasn't that at all. And maybe there are some more similarities than I'm giving it credit for with this offense. I hope not. But that's where we were already on the roller coaster going down. There is no more going up.
Oh yeah, we were singing Boys to Men at this time last year.
Yeah, you were very out on the team. I think you're a little out on the Cardinals this year. You were completely out at this point last year.
I was watching the game just to see them implode. Now I'm watching to see if the offense breaks through.
All right, let's go back out to the mic drop feature to hear from you guys. This one's from Philip.
I feel better about this year's team because the games are at least watchable, but I don't feel better about the situation this year than I did last year because I think long term we're still in the same problem. Yes, the pitching has been much better, and I am thankful for that. However, what's the long-term plan? Are we going to be doing stopgap pitching for the next 3 or 4 seasons? Because we don't have a long-term answer. We've got 2 pitchers that basically blow up, and then we've got 2 guys that are probably pitching better than what anybody's expected them to. But they're on 1-year contracts.
Man, if people were watching on YouTube, all 3 of us had a different reaction to when Philip said, like, that the games are at least watchable. BK nods, T-Bone shakes his head, and I go, huh?
Yeah, they're not watchable right now. The product sucks.
I mean, I want to watch them, but then as I'm watching it, I'm like, cool, I'll just turn it on in the 7th when their offense actually shows up.
I didn't have to show up to work today. I wouldn't have watched them yesterday.
I'm genuinely asking this. What's worse, watching a terrible offense or a terrible pitching staff? I mean, they're both bad. Don't get me wrong. This is like asking you, which one would you rather read?
I would much rather watch a terrible pitching staff. Because at least, like, the offense is great to give me hope. If I watch a bad offense, my pitcher does what Michaelis does yesterday, gives up 3 runs, game over.
See, I'd rather not watch a bad offense because you know what happens when a team scores a run? I know you're not winning. You know, like
but you'd rather watch bad pitching.
Well, no, but with at least bad pitching, I think an offense can outscore a bad pitching.
That's what I'm saying.
Staff.
That's what I'm saying. I'd much rather watch bad pitching.
I see.
Because I know the offense gives me a chance to keep it interesting.
Yeah, I can't watch a bad offense.
Yeah.
That's why watching the Cardinals right now is like pulling teeth. Because I know, like yesterday, they were down, 3-0 after 3? That game was over. Like, it was over. Yeah, you can say through your teeth, hey, they could come back. Maybe the offense clicks. You're lying to yourself. They weren't going to hit yesterday. They just weren't. That's the St. Louis Cardinals right now.
But to be fair, 2 days ago they did.
No.
2 days ago they...
2 runs. Let's have a conversation when they're scoring 4. 2 runs, fine. Sure. They were able to scrap and claw a 2-1 win.
Sorry, I didn't realize it was going to make T-Bone that mad.
Idiot!
Can I say something that is not going to be ideal?
Oh, God. Unproductive outs. Here we go.
They have a minus 30 run differential this year. Do you know what their run differential was at this point last year? They were 10-21. They're 14-17.
It was like minus 75.
Minus 19.
Oh. Ooh.
Their run differential through the first 31 games this year is worse than it was at this point last year. So, yes, while the record is better and the games, I actually do agree with him. I think the games are more watchable. You're in a lot of games right now. And I do believe that there's more hope today than there was at this point last year. You were 10 games back in the division at this point last year. You're 5.5 back right now. Man, there's just so much that you can point to right now and be like, ooh, but what about that? That is also concerning. For every positive, there are 4 negatives about the Cardinals today. It's a weird start to the season.
I'm picking up good vibrations. No? Okay, cool. Sorry, guys.
When was the last time we had this many consecutive seasons of just blah for both sports teams here in St. Louis? Like 07? I guess that wouldn't have been consecutive, though. You were coming off of a World Series.
What was 08?
It's fine. It was better.
I think they missed the playoffs again, if I'm not mistaken.
So that would probably be it, though. They made it in 09.
If we're talking about blah seasons for the Cardinals, there's been a lot of them since I've started.
If we're talking like just in St. Louis for sports combined, I would say probably 07, 08, because that was when the Blues were bad too.
Yeah.
That was probably it.
I miss fun sports.
Well,
let's get to Mizzou season. I need that.
What
I need that back in my life.
No, let's get to Blue season.
They suck too.
Coming up next.
Better than the Cardinals.
Speaking of Mizzou, I think we're watching the beginning of what the next version of college sports will look like. I think you're going to prefer it. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. The college sports are going through a fundamental shift right now, and it sounds like that could continue. If you've been paying attention behind the scenes, there's been a lot of court cases that have taken place over the past month or two, Alex, that have shot down basically any restriction with player movement that previously existed. You can essentially, at this point, and this is true, if you were a basketball player, say you went to Illinois, and your season goes off the rails, it's not going as planned, and you were like, look over there at Mizzou. Look how great that team is. And you decided at semester, I'm going to transfer. I'm going to go play for a better program with a better coach. I want to go play for the Tigers. You could do so now.
Makes
because
sense.
there are no restrictions. You can go to as many schools and transfer as often as you would like. That's the new way of college sports. If you previously thought that people were transferring a lot, just wait. It's going to get worse before it gets better.
Sucked.
Well, at least they're a winning college football program.
College sports are trying to find a way around that. And one of the things, I think the end game here for everybody, and this includes for student athletes, they're going to eventually be employees. They're going to be employees of the schools. And what that means, and this is from a bowl season director who told Yahoo Sports, it would require NIL to be in-house. So the schools would make direct payments to the players. Wow. And with those payments, the athletes would then sign a binding agreement, a binding contract with that school that would require them to play in bowl games and college football playoffs games. And the goal from the bowl season director is that it would mean more players would play, fewer opt-outs would take place. Now, T-Bone was talking about this before the show today, and he made a really good point. You would still see opt-outs because some players, like, for example, Marvin Harrison Jr., would say, it's not worth it for me to play in this Cotton Bowl to receive the extra $5,000 that I'm going to get to play in it. I'm going to be a top 5 pick in this year's draft. I'll forego that payment to be in the NFL draft because I don't need this. It's not worth it. The risk of injury is not worth it for me. But there are other players, like a Tyler Beatty, for example, a couple of years ago for Mizzou. He probably would have played in the bowl game because he's a 6th or 7th round pick, whatever. I'll get my payment here. I'll be good to go. I think it goes beyond, though, payments and opting in and having a binding agreement for just the college football playoff or for the bowl games. I think what you'd see here, Alex, is there would be a new agreement in place between the schools and the players. You will play here for X number of years.
Yeah.
And that is the way that you are going to commit to our university now. Like, hey, you have to be here for at least 2 seasons in order to receive this full payment. Otherwise, the signing bonus or whatever, there would be some amount of payment that goes into escrow that you get after 2 years that you would not receive if you decide to leave. And I think that's going to be the way that these schools get around what is currently taking place with guys that are going to places and getting these massive NIL deals, and then a year later, they're back on the market. Right now, everybody is a free agent every year, and it's a nightmare. I am all for player movement and players getting what they deserve. There has to be some guardrails that take place because every other place in America, there are guardrails in place that avoid situations like what you have right now in college football and in college basketball. So I think this is the starting point of where college sports are ultimately heading.
So we're talking athletes are employees of the college.
Correct.
Which, honestly, I know I've pushed back in the past about like student athletes and the students first. I know, real education. Look at me. Anyway, it creates more investment from people with their programs because you know that star that is a part that was recruited, that brought in, you know he's going to be there for the longevity. Because I think it's hard for people to now get attached to a program unless you're a diehard fan. You went there. It's hard to get attached because you know all of these players you're watching are going to be gone next year. If your team stinks, none of these guys are going to be back, and you're bringing in a whole new crop of players. Whereas now, if you get into this side of it, you know that a core that was scouted and recruited and brought in, that is going to be the core that you get to be a fan of for the next 2-3 years.
Yeah, I think this is where they have to go because you're right. There do need to be guardrails on it because it is getting too much like the Wild Wild West. And I am all for player movement. And I think what these would essentially be a contract when we get to this point. I think there will need to be is an opt-out clause too. If the coach leaves or the coach gets fired, you can definitely enter. You get your payment and you move on, because that next coach that they bring in may not want you, and you need to be able to shop around. But I do think you need to get to this point and kind of cool down the transfer portal, because it has gotten so wild. It is constant just churning of players going in and out of the portal.
I think it's bad for the kids too. Honestly,
I agree.
It's not healthy when you're in those formative years to be moving as often as they are. They're just going and playing for this and that and this and that. And man, there's no development that takes place when you do that. Like, just imagine your support system that is in place at one place, and over years, I mean, imagine your own personal life, right? You're 18 to 22 years old. Think about what you're going through mentally, physically, emotionally, and to have your support system changing every single season. You don't learn how to deal with failure when you have that take place. And I'm not talking down to anybody. Like, I was in that place. Like, we've all been there, right? You learn from your mistakes as much as you learn from the things that you do well. And when you're just transferring away or getting away from your mistakes every time, I don't know that that's necessarily what's best for these kids long term. So I think there's real value in this. I think long term, this is going to be the way that things end up going. Now, there's downside. I think the NIL agreements for some players will probably end up going down if this is the way that things go compared to what it is today. And you won't be able to shop yourself every single season, which means that you're not going to maximize your total earnings the way that you are currently if you're a college football player willing to sell yourself every offseason. No harm. Hey, those are the rules. Go for it. But I think long-term it could eventually be for the greater good of everybody involved if this is the decision that they decide to make. I also think there will be certain players that still can maximize their value. Like, if you're Luther Burden and you've got every school in the country that wants you to go there, you could probably negotiate some kind of a contract with the school that you choose where you say, hey, I want a one-year deal. You know, like, this is something that LeBron James did a really good job of, where he said, I'm not going to have those 5-year max deals. I'm going to sign like a 1 plus a player option. And some players might end up being able to do that. Like Caleb Williams could have done that coming out of high school, but it will be the exception as opposed to the rule. Maybe the top 5 players in a recruiting cycle could get that nationally. Whereas right now it's everybody is getting a 1-year deal.
Yeah, and this is where I'll be fascinated to see where it goes, because to your point there, I think a lot of the top recruits would want to do that, but I think what you'll see is the NCAA as a group try to negotiate like you see in all sports, where you get the quote-unquote team-friendly deal to start things, to where maybe when you're recruited, the first contract you sign is automatic 2 years. Now, you can like redshirt your freshman year and still keep some eligibility, and then you can hit the free agent quote-unquote market. And then, because for football, for example, you've got to play 3 years. So then, like Caleb Williams, for instance, signs with Oak, as a bad example because he transferred, but say a quarterback signs with top-level recruit, has that 2-year contract. Yeah, that's why I think he's a bad example to use. But someone signs a 2-year contract with their program, and then in that 3rd year, they can negotiate to stay in the program or go elsewhere and do the transfer, unless the coach leaves, as you just brought up, which was what happened with Caleb Williams. But I think that's what you're going to see probably, is it's not going to be everybody negotiates a 1 year with an option, or a lot of players get 2-year deals. I think whatever they do when you get recruited into college is all going to be the same contract, and then probably by junior year is when you start to really see things change.
Somebody said, guys, are we just admitting now that college athletes are not students, they're just minor league athletes? Guys, yeah, it's been the case for a really long time. The college basketball tournament makes billions of dollars for the NCAA. The college football playoff, look at the numbers with those TV deals. Are they just making that out of thin air? There's not players out there that are making that for them? Of course. There are players in college football this year that, as you're watching your team, will make hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of their time at your university. I mean, that's more than minor league baseball players get paid on a year-in, year-out basis. So, yeah, they're minor league players. And you don't have to love that. That's totally fair. If you decide, hey, I don't want that, cool. But if you were cool with it previously, like when it wasn't just above board, guys were getting paid in 2005. Ask Reggie Bush how that worked out. He just got
his trophy back.
I preferred under the table.
This is not new. It's just now something that can be discussed. It's something that teams are allowed to make public now. Tennessee used to pay their recruits with McDonald's bags of cash. That was a real thing that happened.
Did they put the grease stain on the bottom of the bag to make it look like that it wasn't actually cash?
So this is not a new thing. Ole Miss got in a lot of trouble. Hey, the SMU scandal, there's a 30 for 30 about it. Suddenly players were showing up with some brand new cars, and they apparently got the money from their family that didn't have any money prior to them showing up on SMU's campus. So this is not a new thing. It is just now becoming something that is legalized within college sports.
These places need to get better at lying.
So
you don't have to, I guess,
This is not some new thing. This is just something that now we can talk about publicly, when previously it was a hush hush, wink wink, nudge nudge. Nobody's getting paid out there. All right, coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to dive into the junk drawer. But next, Jamie Rivers mentioned a new name yesterday, Alex, that we could consider as a defenseman for the St. Louis Blues. He's a teammate of the guy that you'd like to see here in St. Louis. We'll talk about both of them next year on 101 ESPN.
Terry Hendricks Near Day Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals fell to the Detroit Tigers yesterday 4-1 as they dropped 2 of 3 in Detroit. They are off today before getting back in action tomorrow when they start a 3-game set home against the Chicago White Sox. 7:15 will be first pitch, and Sonny Gray will get the start for the Cardinals. The sports update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alex Ferrario hates the Vegas Golden Knights, hates everything about their organization except for their players. Big fan of most of the players that exist on that team, especially when you look at the blue line. And Alex, this offseason, the Vegas Golden Knights are going to have some very difficult decisions because the way that they operate in season, super fun until you get to the offseason. Then it becomes a little bit difficult to decide, okay, who are we bringing back because we're $150 million over budget?
Yeah, they have 20 players next year on their roster, and they have $897,000 in cap space.
Yeah, so they need to make some moves.
This is doable.
To be able to determine, all right, who are we going to go out there and get? How do we upgrade this roster?
Hey, Mark, congrats. You're going to have 6 months off on LTIR. We'll see you in April.
There you go. That's typically the way that these things end up going. Yesterday, Jamie Rivers brought up a name that could be an option for the Blues because of the way that the Vegas Golden Knights operate.
We know that the Vegas Golden Knights are going to have to clean house. They have to get rid of some money. They will never fit under the salary cap as they're currently constructed. And I look at a guy like Braden McNabb, and he's a monster. Is he 6'4", 230? Yeah, 6'4", 230. And he's moving the puck well. He would be an unbelievable third pair D pairing for the Blues. I think that's the direction you have to go in.
215 pounds, Jamie. Don't put 15 pounds on Braden McNabb. Come on, man.
No, make him look good.
Alex, he does already. 6'4", 215's bigger than every player but one on the Blues defense.
I think he could be a top pair defenseman for you. He's playing 19 minutes a night for one of the best teams in the NHL.
I think he's already a second pair. That's why I was. It's not that I don't agree with Jamie because I love the idea of Braden McNabb. I mean, you talk about piss and vinegar on a team. Like, this is him right here. Like, this is the dude that has laid multiple massive hits. I think he's the one that injured Jake Neighbors, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Not Jake Neighbors. He injured another Blues player. Who am I forgetting?
I thought it was Jake Neighbors.
No, Neighbors got injured in that San Jose Sharks game against Luke Cunnin.
Who was it that
McNabb took somebody out when they played against each other? Regardless, like, this dude plays awesome. I actually would disagree in the fact that he's a third pair defenseman. I would put this dude as your second pair defenseman for how good he is.
Now, he is older. He's 33 years old. He'll be 34 next year.
And that's the part that I was just like, man,
there's only 1 year left on his contract. It's $2.8 million. That is a more than reasonable salary, and it doesn't really fit in timeline-wise with what you're trying to build here in St. Louis. But he's a good player. He makes you better. And if that's the end of discussion, like, hey, you got to give up a mid-round pick, get him at $2.8 million, take the salary off their hands, and have him in your roster, put him either in your first or second pairing, in my opinion, for next season, boom, cool. I'm totally in for all of those different things that come with Braden McNabb. But if I'm looking towards their roster and saying to myself, okay, who's the guy that I would want to pluck from that roster? Alex, it's your boy that you've been mentioning because of the timeline, because of the age
and the upside
for the Blues, and it's Nicholas Hague. Now, he's not as good right now as what Braden McNabb is. McNabb is a better player today. The Vegas Golden Knights have told you that with their actions by not playing Nicholas Hague in the vast majority of this playoff series and having Braden McNabb as one of their top players. So, not as good right now, but Nicholas Hague is 25. He's under contract next year for $2.3 million and then has an RFA status where you could sign him long-term if you want to. That's the guy that I'd be looking at if I'm the Blues, trying to help save the Vegas Golden Knights from themselves with this cap situation.
And that's why every time I bring up a name and you respond with a little bit of a tone problem, but it's okay, buddy. I know who you are. You respond with, why would they move on from him? If I'm Vegas, I'm not moving on from Braden McNabb, because that dude only cost me $2.8 million, and next year he's going to be 34 and a UFA that's still playing top 4 minutes.
By the way, it was Oscar Sundqvist that I heard.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I would be more likely, if I'm Vegas, to get rid of Hague, because the return is going to be more valuable for me because he's very cheap right now. He's 25, but I know that in one more year, he's going to get paid more money than I can afford to keep on my roster. So And again, I think Jamie's absolutely correct. This guy is a really good player, but I also look at it as, man, right now I need to find upside. And McNabb has the upside of size and grit, which I think this team desperately needs. I need somebody who can give me that time frame as everyone else on my roster. And a 25-year-old, Nicholas Hague is the one I'd be going after and saying, what do we need to do to get him off of your hands? You don't really need them if you're Vegas, because you've got Shea Theodore, you've got Noah Hannafin, both left-handed defensemen, and you also have Zach Whitecloud, who's 27 years old. So, like, in this scenario, it would be more likely to get a defenseman. We're going to talk about this in the 1 o'clock hour, but, man, you need upside right now from somebody who could be a top-4 defenseman. And McNabb is that now, but timeline-wise, when you're ready to compete, he's Marco Scandella.
By the way, apparently Nicholas Hague is hurt right now, and that's part of why he's not been in the lineup.
They played the first game. He got dinged up, but Bruce Cassidy went with Alec Martinez, and then they stuck with him. They say he's still dinged up, but we know how the playoffs go. If you want to be in the lineup, you're in the lineup.
Yeah, so that could be part of why they have made that decision. But whether it's McNabb or Hague, this is a team that I would be targeting. They've got tree trunks out there that are playing defense for them out in Las Vegas, and if you could have either one of them in your lineup next season for less than $3 million, sign me up, dude. Yeah. I don't know what it would take to acquire one of those two players. I would imagine you're far from the only team that would be interested in them. And there's probably other teams that they would prefer to go to. But McNabb only has a modified no-trade clause. It's not a full, it's 10-team or 5-team at this point in his career. And then Nicholas Hague has no trade protection at this point in his career. He's still too young. So those would be guys that I would be interested in.
And this is the route you have to go this offseason. Frank Saravalli, Daily Faceoff, put out the projections for contracts for UFAs. Stay the hell away from UFA this season, Doug Armstrong, because there are guys that are getting paid way more money than they deserve to be paid. The route you need to go is trades, is acquiring guys that are $2.5 million. I mean, Matt Roy, who I think is a really good defenseman, Saravalli's projecting he's going to get $5.5 million. Brett Pesce projected to get $6.7 million. You want Nikita Zadorov? You want him for the next 4 years at $5 million because that's what the projections are.
Damn.
And none of these guys that I just mentioned are top 4 defensemen. And I don't think you have a problem with your third pair defenseman. I think you got a problem with your top pair defensemen. And that's why if you can go out there and acquire one of these guys, call up the Ottawa Senators and see what they want to do with a Thomas Chabot, you've got to upgrade via trade rather than via free agency.
Damn, he's got Jonathan Marchessault getting a $6 million deal on a per year basis.
That's why, I mean, like we talked about
Elias Lindholm getting 7 years at $8 million per year.
I'd give Booch that contract before I would give Elias Lindholm that contract.
Chandler Stevenson, 5 years, $6 million per at 30 years old right now. Max Domi, a 3-year, $4.5 million deal per year. Dakota Joshua, a guy that got brought up a couple of weeks ago, I think Jamie mentioned him, 3x3 is what he's got him signing.
Sean Walker,
5 years at $6 million per.
Yeah, not doing that. Not doing that.
You know who looks really good, by the way, and would have value on the trade market if that's what free agency is going to look like? Brandon Saad.
Yep.
Brandon Saad is going to have some serious value this offseason if the Blues want to trade him. Now, I don't know that I would want to, but if they are truly in a retool and they don't think next year is going to be a year of contention, you should. Because he has more value than, like, DeBrusk has some similarities to what you have right now in Brandon Saad, and is cheaper with less term.
Yep.
There will be teams that are contending that would view him as the better alternative, and I'll pay assets to get that guy on a cheaper, shorter-term deal.
Yep.
If I'm a contender right now.
Matt Dumba is projected for $3.7 million per year. Like, people are going to get overpaid, which is why your route is via trade this offseason, because there's nothing in free agency that's going to benefit you.
He's Alex Esteban on BK. I don't think they're going to be a cap team next year, by the way. I think they're going to be a little below the cap. Because of what you're talking about here.
I'm with you. I think they're a team that can take on a larger contract if it fits into their time frame of a guy that's 25, 26 years old. That would. I don't think the Blues, like Thomas Chabot is a guy that if the Ottawa Senators decide to move on from him, that's a guy that might fall into the timeline of the Blues, and they could take on $8 million if they can move on from another defenseman. But I'm with you. Unless it's an ideal situation for the Blues, they're not going to be making any significant upgrades.
We'll talk about the TV deals that are a problem right now for Major League Baseball and quietly the NHL. That's coming up in about 10 minutes or so. Junk Drawer coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Look, Luca can't talk yet, so we haven't had any of these situations in our household, but you have a child at home who is very much walking, talking, and doing her own thing.
Not just one, two.
So, have you had any of those, Daddy, there's a monster in the wall discussions yet?
She says there's monsters in her room, but we have a joke in our nighttime routine when she says it. I said, Daddy doesn't allow monsters in the house. And so she repeats it, and so she doesn't think there's monsters in there.
So a toddler told her mom that there were monsters in her closet. There were, to a degree, actually monsters in the closet this time around.
Crap.
It was 50,000 bees. A mother of 3 children under 4 was met with a terrifying surprise after her and her husband investigated why a handful of bees had flown into the attic a couple of times at their North Carolina
Those bees don't got
home.
nothing on me. I'm like the beekeeper of that Yankees game. I'll save the day. Dodgers, wasn't it?
50,000 bees.
How the hell does 50,000 bees get into your house?
50,000 bees inside of the wall.
How?
Dude, my wife would move out of the house, and I'm not kidding. She would say, I'm never coming back. I cannot be here any longer. That's terrifying.
Man, you should see my garage. I got chemicals for every type of bug that enters my home.
We'd give you a call. We'd
Yeah,
give
you
you
darn
your
right you
parents'
do.
company would be coming over right away. We would need that to happen.
See, here's the thing, though. At 50,000, it's not like 50,000 just all of a sudden appear. You saw these bees prior to 50,000 of them.
The honeycomb weighed 100 pounds.
Jeez.
100 pounds of
Poor kid.
honeycomb.
That
How
poor
long
kid.
do you think this was taking place prior to them realizing that
Months.
there was a monster?
Months.
50,000 of them inside of the wall.
And like the kid, it's the 50,000 just don't show up. Like the kid was probably living with this. Was this kid getting repeatedly stung in the middle of the night thinking monsters were biting her?
$20,000 worth of damage was done to the electrical wiring inside of the home.
Wow.
That thing take over the entire wall.
Well, have you seen, I don't know if the article you've seen, because I heard of this story while sitting through a rain delay doing play-by-play.
Sure, of course.
Nothing better to do.
Definitely nothing better to do. But there is a thermal imaging shot of the wall
That is
they
not
show.
included in the one that I'm looking at. But
It is unbelievable because, like, you
I've
typically
seen
would
some
see
big
like
ones.
blue.
Yeah.
Dude, it is like red for like a significant part of that wall.
I mean,
like super hot. It's unbelievable.
Everybody has seen these. Like I've seen some pretty massive ones that they've gone out and like on calls before. And I had a rule when I did pest control. I don't do bees and I don't do snakes. Those are 2 rules.
That makes sense.
Come on, man.
But my dad still sent me on all of them. But like, they don't just develop over a day. Like these take time to develop. And I've seen some that get big. And that's the thing. It's not like they all just stay in the honeycomb while you're living and just all of a sudden erupt at once. That's why it is impossible for me to believe that this just happened one night. We're like, oh, Daddy, there's a monster in my room. And there were 50,000 of them.
I would think you'd start to hear them. That's the thing. Like when you hear them kind of buzzing around.
Well, that's probably why the
especially
kid
with
thought
that
there was
many.
monsters in the bedroom. Because they was here. And that's what I'm like concerned about. Was this kid getting stung repeatedly?
I don't know. It says later on in the story that it was good timing because they're like on leave now. I don't know if they had previously maybe gone on like a really long vacation. They live in North Carolina, but
So maybe they
I know
were on like a
overseas,
vacation.
Some people will have like they call it holiday and they'll be gone for a month. Maybe that's something that they decided to do. And so over the course of a month, this developed inside of their home. It doesn't really describe that in the story that I've got, but whoo, baby.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
My girl's not, because their mom is afraid of literally any type of insect that steps into the house.
Dude.
Like we do to the point where there's a glass cup over one spider. And I bought her a salt gun. I said, kill it. Just shoot it with this salt gun.
We've got the tennis racket that we use.
Yeah.
Kara has one in her car, and we got one
Kara's
in the
gonna-
house.
Kara's gonna be using a lot of those soon.
Walking through the door or coming home at night when it's dark out because the June bugs are out. She's walking through the yard like this.
Does she scream like, ah?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, but now what
The gate
happens
goes,
is
mom's home.
my 1 and my 2-year-old or 3-year-old, like when there's a bug in the house, especially my youngest, Emma, she sees it and just screams at the top of her, bug, 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 bug. I'm like, oh my God, please, can we do something about this? And
We
so
now
then Daddy
have
comes in and saves the day.
This contraption that Kara purchased online because of the problems that she has with insects.
Oh, is it the bug zapper?
Basically, yeah. It's this little thing, but it's not a zapper. It's like a fan almost that it sucks them in. It's got this blue light. So now people that are driving by at night, we've got it posted at like the corner of our house, and we're at the corner of a cul-de-sac, the last house off of the main road. There's just this like emanating blue light that's coming from our house, like the Great Gatsby, where they have that light that's at the end of the cove. That's us, man. But at the end of the cul-de-sac, and it's this massive blue light that bugs are drawn to. We have not yet recovered any June bugs, but I am here to report it does work for a lot of the other bugs that are out there.
Well,
So
get ready, because I had a buddy in
mosquitoes, all that stuff.
I have a buddy who lives in Arkansas who sent me pictures of the cicadas, and he said they are coming.
Sweet.
Did you guys know that we're not getting both groups? We're only getting one?
Oh, really?
Yeah, they said it was both. Then I was reading something because cicadas make me panic, and so I was checking in on it to find out like when I'm not allowed to leave my house. It's the middle of May, if somebody's wondering. Yeah, some entomologist was like, yeah, it's not both of them. You're only getting one in St. Louis.
Well,
now, one is going to be 50 to 60 million of them, but you're only getting one. So calmed my nerves a little bit.
Good enough.
Kind of soothing. You have the window open.
No,
you
it's
hear the
not soothing.
cicadas.
No, it's not.
They're like, oh, they're not dangerous.
They suddenly are like against your window. Yeah. That's not fun.
It's
Nobody
like getting
wants that.
shot with paintballs.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, there's a big issue that's taking place right now on the TV side for both Major League Baseball and, quietly, the NHL. We'll tell you about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at Rhino Shield. Darren and his team taking care of people's homes, people's businesses. And Darren sent me a picture, tons of pictures actually, from metal supermarkets out in Illinois. He sent me the pictures of what it looked like prior to their work and then what it looked like after. And prior to it, looked like a building that has been around for 40 plus years. Now, looks like it was just built thanks to the work that Rhino Shield does. And here's the thing, their product, what they use, it sticks to whatever type of siding you have. So if you're a business and you've got metal siding, if you've got brick siding, stucco, Rhino Shield's product will work on the exterior of it or even the roof of it because it's a 2 to 3 coating process and it sticks 8 to 10 times thicker than any type of paint you're going to buy over the counter at a hardware store. So make sure you give Rhino Shield a call and have them come do the work for you because it's going to look brand new. It's backed by a 25-year transferable warranty. Call Darren today. Tell him Alex Ferrario sent you. 877-25-RHINO, 877-25RHINO.com.
League Baseball has an issue on its hands, and it's not just for Major League Baseball. The NHL has a problem, too, right now. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Alex, there was big news that's been emanating from Bally Sports over the last couple of days. Evan Drellick is the bringer of doom for all things baseball.
Poor guy.
That was the case during the CBA negotiations, during the Major League Baseball COVID year, whatever you want to call that, a kind of a mini CBA negotiation there. He was the guy that was able to bring us all of the news for those two off seasons, and now he's bringing us the news on the Diamond Sports situation. Now, to catch everybody up, Diamond Sports is the parent company. They own, effectively, Bally Sports. They all were going through this issue of, hey, we don't have enough money, bankruptcy time. And when you go into bankruptcy court, basically you're potentially going to have to sell off all of your assets, and you're no longer going to be the entity that produces and disseminates all of the games for Major League Baseball, for the NBA, for NHL, etc. So the local rights deals, baseball, we'll focus on them for a moment, was trying to decide, what are we going to do? Not just long-term, but for the foreseeable future, if this thing ends up in a situation where Bally just is dead. It's just gone. And it sounds like what they wanted to do is, we'll just stream this stuff. We'll figure it out, but at a minimum, we've got to have local streaming available for people that want it in the local markets. Right now, that's not possible because of the blackout situation with Major League Baseball. It seems like MLB doesn't want that anymore. They're like, hey, if we could get rid of the blackout restrictions, that would be great. That's good for fans everywhere. However, Bally kind of wants it because Bally wants you to watch the games through Bally. They want you to buy the cable subscribers that have Bally Sports Midwest available to them. So that way, then they get the money from you having the cable subscription. Unfortunately for Major League Baseball, there's really nothing they can do in this regard if Bally survives. And it sounds like Bally is going to survive. So, Alex, the news story, the update on this is that if that ends up being the case, Bally survives, they're still around in 2025. MLB was apparently looking into, okay, what does that mean for us in terms of the streaming side of things? Can we still stream in 2025 the Cardinals games, for example, in St. Louis, where people can buy this subscription and they can watch the games locally, even if they don't have Bally Sports? The answer is effectively no. That will very likely not be possible if Bally Sports exists in 2025.
Yeah, because Bally's would keep control over the broadcast rights.
So that stinks locally. The other problem is Bally is no longer available on Comcast. So if you got Comcast, can't watch Cardinals games, can't watch Blues games, because you can't stream them. You don't get it on your cable subscription. Not good. It's also not available on YouTube TV, which is something that I learned recently. I was not aware of this because I have a DirecTV package. I don't have to watch the YouTube TV side of things. Yep. That sucks. That's a lot of people, especially people our age in this room right now with T-Bone, Alex, myself. We're all between 25-ish and 35.
Whoa.
Well, you also told me I was 230 pounds. So.
Man, you are on one today.
Guys, this is a huge issue. Yep. Not just for Major League Baseball, but also locally for the NHL as well. You are going to lose some young fans because they're just going to forget about your sport and, down the road, say, I didn't miss it. I didn't miss watching baseball during the summer. I didn't miss watching hockey during the fall or the winter. I was fine without it. So whenever you do get that streaming package, because it's been at that point a year or two where they didn't have it available to them, I don't know that there's any bigger issue right now facing those two sports than this issue. And they've got to get this thing figured out, dude. Those blackouts have to go away by next year.
Yeah, I mean, Bally's is just funneling this towards the app. They're taking everything else out of the conversation and just funneling you towards one direction, which, I mean, I don't know how you survive with something like that. But you remember when we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago of talking about why people aren't going to the games, and I brought up, I really think a lot of this is because people can't watch it at home anymore because of the blackouts and because it's taken off of so many different distributors. People are like, well, who cares? It's gone. So it's bad for the business side of it because if I can't get Bally's on my television subscriber or the apps that I use, because I've already paid for 1,500 of them, I'm not going to pay extra for it. So guess what? You're dead to me. I'm not going to watch that. It's bad for the actual league, but it's also bad for the individual teams for the ticket sales, which, to me, screams more of a problem that there's going to be an uproar of issues. Because, like, let's just take the Cardinals, for example. If there's a big chunk of fans that say, I don't want to go to games because I don't watch them at home, I can't get a hold of the television. So if I'm not watching them at home, why am I going to commit hundreds of dollars to go to the game? And now the Cardinals are going to be screaming, well, we can't get people in the seats. Well, a lot of that is because people can't watch your product because Bally's is funneling you to one direction. And so many people in the world right now are saying, I don't want to pay another $25 a month for another brand to just watch Cardinals.
But at least I want to have that option.
Yeah.
Like, I do think, sure, there's going to be a lot of people that say what Alex is talking about here, where the streaming option, people won't pay for it. Cool. At least give me the option.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there would be a scenario right now. I have DirecTV in large part, not because I love DirecTV or ATT. Like, I don't care where I get my subscription from in terms of what I'm able to watch.
Shout out for anybody who wants to sponsor us.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. I don't care where my cable or my internet come from, as long as I've got the stuff that I need to be able to watch for my job.
Yeah.
And if I get YouTube TV, for example, I can't do my job the way that I need to. Or if I'm a diehard Cardinals or Blues fan here in St. Louis, I can't switch to those things unless I'm just willing to not watch the games anymore. With my brother-in-law, they have YouTube TV at home.
Same with me.
You mentioned the other day, dude, I haven't watched a Cardinals game all year long. He's a huge Cardinals fan, hasn't watched a Cardinals game all year long. He'll just watch him on the highlights the next morning.
I went over there for Easter, and I was like, hey, man, can you turn the Cardinals game on? He's like, no, I have YouTube TV. And I'm like, well, isn't it on there? No.
There would be a great opportunity here for Major League Baseball or for the Blues, for example, to have that streaming option where maybe I don't have TV at home. I just stream stuff. I've got Netflix, I've got Hulu, etc., and I've got the Cardinals app, which allows me to stream the Cardinals games instead of paying $75 a month for cable. I'm just paying $20 a month during the Cardinal season and $20 a month for the Blues season to watch the things that I was going to watch anyways on those apps. That would be a great boon for the sport, for fans. Everybody involved would win in that scenario, except for Bally. Bally is the one that would suffer. So they're the ones that say, no baseball, we have a contract in place, and that contract includes blackouts. We don't want people canceling their cable subscription to do what I just said, which is I don't need cable anymore. I just want to watch the Cardinals and the Blues. I've got 150 other channels that are available to me that I never watch. So what if I just canceled that subscription, got the Blues and Cardinal subscriptions? Now I've got those. That money goes to MLB and NHL as opposed to Bally. And Bally needs your subscription. So I get why they're blocking this from taking place. Baseball in an honest moment would probably tell you long term would be best for Bally to go under right now, for them to be able to figure that thing out. However, in the immediacy, they need that revenue. So they're between a rock and a hard place of what do we do here? What's best for us now versus in the future? What's best for our fans? And what does it mean for us if our fans that are younger can't consume our product right now? What does that mean 5 years from now when it's kind of morbid to say, but some of our fans are dying off as they continue that are currently watching us on cable? It ain't good, man. It's not a good place to be in.
No, it's not. And I think what will happen if Bally does, and it sounds like to your point, they're going to survive thanks to Amazon coming in and saving them. I think what you're going to see baseball attempt to do, because you're right, they are in a rock and a hard place. I don't think they're going to do new contracts for I think it's the Twins, Rangers, and there's one other team. There are 3 teams that currently are on one-year deals with Bally, and there are 3 teams like the Rockies and the Diamondbacks and Padres, I think, are the 3 that they are producing. I think they will take those 6 and they will try it as like a little trial run for their streaming thing, to what you're talking about, to where they're kind of trying to do the best of both worlds, where it is, hey, we're still stuck with Bally, so we've got to just deal with this. But, hey, let's use these 6 teams as like our test ground. Let's figure out how we're going to do the streaming thing, so when the contracts do come up, when the Cardinals contract is up with Bally, boom, we take it, we got the streaming rights, we got everything, here we go, now we know what to do. I think that's what they're going to attempt to do when this Bally Sports thing gets done. There will be 6 teams that they're going to own the rights to, that they're going to keep to use as a quote-unquote trial run to try and figure out the whole streaming setup.
I was reading a piece by Sean Shapiro, who covers the National Hockey League, and he did a piece on this Duck stream that's taking place. It's basically an audio network of all Anaheim Duck stuff, of podcasts and broadcast for the radio play-by-play, and it's all on this Duck stream. And he talked about the situation that's taking place right now, and the next step, the executive producer of this Duck stream basically said, the next step is driving everybody for all of our games. So that's going to be something I would imagine a lot of hockey teams are going to be looking at, that if this Bally Sports thing does fall apart, direct people towards one stream that has everything.
Sure, and I think that's their goal long term. I mean, baseball has said long term we would like to have a streaming option that is basically MLB TV but for local streams.
Yeah.
So they will offer it nationally, and it will include your local team. Instead of having the blackouts, you can now watch your Cardinals on MLB TV through our app.
And it's got all the content.
Correct. And that's what they would like to have, kind of like MLS, the season pass that's available, where you can have the 360 and everything that's right there for you. They've got a bunch of stuff, content available for them. That's basically what MLB would like to do. They can't, though. They can't until Bally Sports goes under or the contracts are all no longer in existence. And right now, it appears that's not going to be the case in 2025. And there are many teams that's not going to be the case for a number of years. They have long-term contracts that are already in place, the Cardinals being one of them. I don't know how they get this done. I don't know what the deal could be that exists between Major League Baseball and Bally or Diamond, whoever. But eventually that's going to be the conversation that has to be had, because this is long-term, something that could cripple those sports. And I don't mean to be dramatic there. I don't think it's going to like kill Major League Baseball or the NHL or the NBA or anything, but it's something that can diminish the audience, the reach that you have available to you, especially for young people. And you want to get people involved in your product as early as possible, so that way they get hooked. Because the best way to emotionally tie somebody to your product is to get them young. Why do people go, why is Disney such a successful product? Because they get you when you're 3, dude. Like when you're 3 years old, you come out of the womb and kids are watching Disney, right? Well, that's the kind of thing that sports have. Why did we all become sports fanatics now at this point in our lives? Because they got us when we were young and we were impressionable. And you go to the games, you're like, man, that's my favorite player. That's my favorite team. And for the rest of your life, for many of us, for many of you that are listening right now, that was never going to change. You were never going to have another team that you rooted for unless they move. You're never going to have a situation where you're not a Cardinals fan, right? That changes for kids if they can't watch the games. If you don't have access to the products that they want you to be tied to, how do they tie you to it? That's something that Major League Baseball has got to get fixed, and it affects the Blues as well. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We got a game of Believe It or Not. It's T-Bone's favorite time of the week here on 101 ESPN.
Oh, sing it, boys. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so
free, flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be?
Believe it or not, it's just me.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line.
Karaoke night.
Karaoke night.
For Believe It or Not.
Dave and Buster's, where we can gamble on things against each other.
Do you think people would go to that if we had a karaoke night that we hosted?
Are you kidding me?
I want to host a bingo night as well. We're going on a
one would go
cruise
to
in
that.
January.
Do you want to host
Bingo's apparently making a comeback.
Do you want to host a Pokemon battle too?
I'd do it.
Brandon Ketchum showing up with his gloves.
Dude. We've already got the name.
Text us
Look,
now.
You guys, I think people were in on karaoke. Now you guys have lost.
No, seriously, text us 314-399-9646. Put it up on our YouTube page. And, of course, BK loves doing polls, so put your poll out there, buddy. You love polls. You do. BK and Ferrario karaoke night.
I didn't appreciate your tone there.
I don't think it was tone. I was making a statement. You love polls. Look at your Twitter handle.
At BK Sports Talk.
At BK Sports Talk. Some of the pictures are a little questionable.
ESPN.
But here's the thing.
At Timo 101 ESPN.
Let
you
us
can find
know.
me.
Because smash that like button.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Just get to the point, man.
Karaoke night with BK and Ferrario. I've already got a song ready to go.
Oh, dibs on Careless Whisper.
Oh, dude.
Damn.
That's how you walk out not single of the karaoke night. You sing Careless
That's how
Whisper.
you win karaoke night.
No, dude. Mine's Billy Joel, Only the Good Die Young.
I guess no, mine's Black Parade, so.
No, maybe we don't invite him.
Yeah, no.
Ferrario and T-Bone karaoke night.
T&A karaoke night.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. Guys, believe it or not, both Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt finished the season with at least 25 home runs this year.
He's dropped it down to 25 now. He did 30 last
I'm
time.
Close to 20.
Yeah, I'm going to say not believe
They
it.
get 15, and maybe we've got something.
Can I ask a different one? I don't like this anymore.
No, you already asked it. We're moving on.
Believe it or not, Missouri football will finish in the college football playoff this year.
Does that mean like the round of 16?
They're in the playoff.
Yeah, I'll say believe that one.
Did you guys see the piece earlier
Everybody
today
gets
from
in.
the Arkansas reporter that was like, Arkansas's got to save us from Mizzou being in the playoff this year? Good thing.
Okay. Tough guy. I'll believe it. I think they've got a really good roster. You're returning with Luther Burden. You've got Brady Cook. They'll figure out the running game. They've got multiple guys there that they can just see who ends up winning that battle. I'll believe it. I think they can sneak into the playoff.
This is the piece that I was referencing. It's from allhogs.com.
Sorry. Great website, by the way.
If the SEC is to avoid its nightmare scenario this upcoming football season, it's going to be up to Arkansas and Mississippi State to keep it from happening.
Oh.
Texas and Missouri, two SEC schools that fans don't really think of as being part of the conference, have a very good chance of facing one another in the SEC championship game this fall. That's not necessarily because they will be the two best schools in the conference. It has more to do with having the two easiest schedules in the SEC. They're in. Believe it. Alex?
All Hogs, just making sure they're calling out the fans right now. Guys, believe it or not, a player who is an upcoming free agent will replace Kevin Hayes on the Blues roster this year.
Not. I think Dalibor Dvorsky will replace him on the roster next year.
Or who's going to replace Dalibor Dvorsky?
What? You mean as in the top six, I'm assuming?
I think Dalibor Dvorsky's replacing Kasperi Kapanen on the roster. Who's replacing Kevin Hayes on the roster? Hit you with a little barn burner. Any more brain busters?
Maybe I'm not. I mean, like Zach Dean's going to play next year.
Yeah, but Dean was already on the roster. I think Kapanen comes out, Dvorsky goes in. We don't believe Kevin Hayes is going to be here next year. An NHL free agent is going to fill that spot.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Don't say because Dalibor Dvorsky's going to fill it.
I mean, if I'm looking at my centers, I think going into the season,
I think Dvorsky's a winger next year. I don't think he's a centerman next year.
Sure, but I think him and Booch switch off.
I think Booch is a winger next year.
Let me answer this directly. I do not believe that they will sign a free agent center this offseason.
Didn't like your tone there, but okay.
I'm the tone detector. He was fine there.
You're the
I will
tone
say,
deafener.
I'm not going to believe this because I think Hayes will still be on the roster. I think they're going to look to try and get out of it, and I think they'll ultimately just say, you know what, let's just keep him as a third-line center. We're in a transition. That's my
I think you both are stupid. I think there will be a free agent that fills Kevin Hayes' spot.
All right.
See, now, that was an attitude problem.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah,
I was making a bold statement.
Tomorrow we'll get your Ferrario 5 on the 5 center options that the Blues could add in free agency. We've got the salaries now via daily faceoff. Right?
There's also a tone problem. But
T-Bone? I think we're creating content on the air. It's going to be good content. I'm excited
We
for
just
it.
created content outside of the air.
T-Bone?
Guys, believe it or not, the Cardinals will be sellers at this year's trade deadline.
Believe it.
Not. Let's relax.
Because they're going to be a playoff team still.
The offense is going to get back on track.
Paul
You
Goldschmidt.
just keep lowering your home run number for the two big bats.
Getting further into the season, and they have 3 combined, I believe.
Paul
right now.
Goldschmidt. You are now a member of.
Oh, he's not
Enter
tradable,
team's
man.
name here.
Nobody would trade for Goldie.
Have you seen what he's done in the last 10 games? He's going to be fine.
And then get
Relax over
and
there.
then get a contract extension.
I will.
Dude, the fast lane yesterday was talking about it, and Kerry said they're going to re-sign Paul Goldschmidt. You guys just watch. And I wanted to scream at my radio and say, Kerry, they're not going to do that. And I just, in my mind, as I thought about screaming at my radio as I'm going to pick up Luca from daycare, I thought to
your tone.
myself, no,
It's a
I did this to Alex last offseason.
You did?
And Alex was right about everything, and I was loud wrong.
Hold on. Can you say that one more time?
Kerry might be right here, and that would be devastating.
No. Kerry's not might be right. Kerry will be right.
Paul Goldschmidt, by the way, in his last 10 games is batting .340 with a .500 slugging percentage. He's got a .905 OPS. He's back. He's fine. T-Bone?
He's not back.
Now watch him go over in the White Sox series.
I'm not going to believe it because I just don't think they're bad enough to fall out of contention. Now, if I said believe it or not, the Cardinals just stay pat at the deadline, what would you say?
Believe
I'd
it.
say believe it. I think there's a chance they may look at their
They're
team and
gonna
go,
be buyers.
there's no real upgrades for us to make, and we're not going to trade for Valdez, even though we'll have that conversation.
You're not
we're
gonna
going to trade
like
for
what
a
they get.
Luzardo.
Man.
But they're
BK,
gonna buy.
whatever fantasy world you live in from March until September, I want to live in that world with you, man. Maybe we'll have different houses so we don't speak to each other, but I'd like to live in that world.
Cardinals are going to trade for Jordan Montgomery at the deadline this year. That'll be what they do.
That will piss me off so much. That will piss me off so
every
much.
opportunity to sign him in the offseason.
Watch them give up the prospects they got in return.
No, they'll give up Alec Burleson for him.
They'll end up trading like Thomas Ajacey, who will be amazing for the Diamondbacks next year. They'll trade who else? Sim Roberse. He'll end up being amazing for the Diamondbacks down the stretch. You'll be like, wait, he could have been here. You could have just had him as your starter. That'll be the way that goes.
They're still getting Quintana.
Somebody from the Astros will be here.
No, stop. You have to give up actual prospect capital for that. We don't do that.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. Guys, believe it or not, the Cardinals will fail to draw 3 million fans this year.
Oh, not believe it. They're going to tell you we got 3 million fans.
Oh, that is a good question. Because their numbers have been down significantly in weekday games. And I wouldn't be shocked if they're down this weekend, not because of the team, but they're playing the damn White Sox. I'm not going to believe it. I still think they'll get over 3 million, but I think it's going to be close.
Their attendance has gone up a little bit. There was that one series against the Phillies where, was it the Phillies, that series?
Yeah.
It was pretty bad.
Milwaukee, they drew pretty well.
Yeah, it was really good over the weekend against Milwaukee. They were at 40,000 per game there. I'm going to say not believe. I think they end up getting to 3 million this year. It'll be tight. I think it'll be closer. If you're looking at the actual fans in the stadium, though, it will not be anything approaching that.
No, but they will tell you that it was 3 million.
That's right. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. Guys, believe it or not, BK will once again end up with the most punishments this year in the BK and Ferrario Pick'em Challenge.
I mean, I'll believe that one. 2 for 2, my man.
Yeah, I'd believe it. He's terrible at
We got to come up with whole new punishments with
football
these.
betting. We still got to serve, too, by the way. We got chuck tomatoes at you, and I got to eat some nasty jelly beans.
Oh, I'll bring the jelly beans tomorrow.
We'll make that work. I have a feeling, guys, we're going to have plenty of content to fill this summer.
What does that mean, man?
Here on,
I thought you just said the Cardinals were making the playoffs.
you know, the dog days of summer. Blues not doing anything in free agency. It's going to be tough.
I just told you
To be
they were.
fair, NHL free agency lasts a day, and then it's over.
You know what popped up in my memories the other day? T-Bone puking after the beer mile. What a great day that was,
That was
man.
awesome. Guys,
All-time
believe it or
classic.
not, Deion Sanders will still be at Colorado 5 years from now.
Not. I think he's gone when his son goes.
That's where I am. I'm not going to believe it. I always thought it was very limited window. I just can't see him coaching once Shador's gone and his other son leaves.
He'll be a skills coach for an NFL team that his son gets drafted by.
I'm not going to believe this. And the tough part, though, is like, who's hiring him? Because it was fun to start out last year, and eventually results start to matter. And they won one conference game last year. So if something like that happens again in 2024, there's not going to be people that want this circus that involves Deion Sanders if it doesn't also come with the winning.
Yeah.
The sell for Colorado was, hey, you're going to get all this notoriety and the winning's going to come with it. And last year, like, you could, hey man, the roster stunk the year prior. It was totally understandable that Colorado would be improved, but would still be a bad football team. If they once again come back this year and they're still a bad football team and they're just recycling different names on the roster via the transfer portal because he doesn't recruit, he literally does not go out on high school visits. There's not going to be a whole lot of other Power 5 conference teams that want him to be a part of their program. So 5 years from now, I think it's every bit as likely that he's fired from Colorado as that he left for a bigger job. This is a huge year for Deion Sanders if this thing's going to work out long term because he's got a son. And if his son's actually a good quarterback, if it doesn't work with his son at the helm, man, it's hard to believe that it's going to work with somebody else there at Colorado. Coming up next, what can we learn from the Blues' success in previous eras? Alex, T-Bone sent us something yesterday that stood out to you about when they have had success as an organization and the one common theme through each of those different eras. We'll tell you about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Terry Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals fell to the Detroit Tigers yesterday 4-1. They'll be back in action tomorrow night as they start a 3-game set with the Chicago White Sox. 7:15 will be first pitch. This Sports Update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alex, T-Bone sent us something yesterday from our guy Jay Fresh. He's the advanced analytics nerd that covers the NHL. He tweeted something yesterday about the different eras in the NHL, specifically for the St. Louis Blues. He brought up, okay, each era of the Blues can be titled as something. So, like, for example, most recent era for the Blues is the Kyrou Thomas retool. That's over the last 3-4 seasons. And he says it basically starts at the end of Petro. When Petro left, that was the beginning of this era of Blues hockey. And he goes beyond that. Bacchus reset, the 2000s rebuild, the Pronger window, the Hull window. Brett Hull.
The what window?
I don't know why that was so hard for me.
Oh, you can't say that,
And he
man.
goes back beyond that as well. Alex, as we looked into this, and T-Bone made a really good point, I think. You can really look at each of them, and you can say to yourself, did the Blues have a number one defenseman during this era? If they did, super successful. If they didn't, it was probably an era that ended with you being a little disappointed. And that's where we're at right now with the St. Louis Blues. What was your biggest takeaway when you see kind of in black and white which eras of Blues hockey were successful?
It was the two that had a defined number one defenseman. It was the Pronger era, and it was the Alex Pietrangelo era. Now, I mean, let's not discount Al McInnes, who was a Hall of Famer also and was a number one defenseman, and he was in the Brett Hull era. And if I'm not mistaken, that was the third best era, Brett Hull era, in that Jay Fresh picture. So the way I read that was the success that you have is predicated off of the number one defenseman for St. Louis. And frankly, I mean, it's what we've been talking about since Petro left. You got to have a number one defenseman. And as much as I love Colton Parayko, he doesn't fall into that category. But if you look at the two, and this was the point that T-Bone brought up, which I thought was great. If you look at the two eras that you're combining right now, the Bacchus rebuild and the Kyrou Thomas retool, you're in a better position than where you were with that Bacchus rebuild, which should give people optimism. But the difference now of what you're trying to get to me, is that number one defenseman. And this goes back to what we talked about earlier of calling Vegas and checking in on a Braden McNabb or the Nikita Zadorovs or any other defenseman that we're talking about right now. You're searching for that number one guy. And I think Colton Parayko is close to it. But to get where like the Dallases are, Colorados, even the Vegas, you got to get that number one defenseman. That's how I'd have looked at those eras with Jay Fresh.
I would also add this to what you're saying there. The windows are longer when you have the number one defenseman involved. Yep. So you go back to 1997, which was the beginning in his mind of the Pronger window for the St. Louis Blues. That window lasted until 2004. It was 6 full seasons of a window there for the Blues. And then you go into the 2000s rebuild. That was 3 years. 3 years of pain here in St. Louis. And then David Bacchus. That's the David Bacchus reset. Alex Pietrangelo becomes a fully formed version of himself. You start the Petro era. That's 9 years. Mm-hmm. The last 2 windows were 3 years apiece. The window with Pronger, 6 years. And then boom, Petro, 9 years. Now you're in this new retool. This has been a 4-year stretch of a retool with Kyrou and Thomas post Alex Pietrangelo. And now you're trying to get back to that number one defenseman again. When you have that guy, the window for contention remains open for quite a while. Now they willingly let him walk via free agency, which is probably not a great way to go about it.
This reminded me you should hold on to him very tight.
Yeah.
When you get
never
one,
let them go.
Do not let them go, dude. Next time around, don't do this same thing. The problem is finding them is really hard. That's really hard.
That's why I find this draft so intriguing, and I don't think you're going to be able to make any types of moves. You're picking 16th, but man, like the number one defenseman might be in this draft. There's a lot of them that become available. I think there's like 5 or 6 guys that are projected to go in the top 10, top 12. I mean, like, you can't you can't sign one in free agency like the Pietrangelo thing unless you're willing to sign a dude who's 30 years old and say, like, we are going to get the best 5 years out of you that we can right now.
Also, there is no Petro available in free agency this year. Maybe one will become available in the future, but this year, like, your best defenseman is, how do you pronounce his last name, Alex? Brady? Sky?
Oh, Brady Shea. Yeah. That and Brandon Montour from the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, those guys aren't number one defensemen.
Yeah. Aaron Ekblad, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be available next offseason, but he's also going to be 30 years old. And maybe. If you want. So that's the thing. Like, you either have to make a trade like the Tampa Bay Lightning did to get Mikhail Sergachev and find that dude that's 24 years old, maybe Nicholas Hague, why I keep bringing him up, or you got to draft him. But you're right. We can talk about Kyrou and Buchnevich and Binnington all we want, but if you just go off of Jay Fresh's piece talking about the successful eras, your two most successful eras in Blues hockey history have been because you've had number one defensemen. And in the Pronger era, you had two of them.
Yep.
And now you have none.
And now you have none. Well, half. I think Parayko's awesome.
I think Parayko's a number two defenseman. Yeah. I think Parayko's a top pair defenseman. I don't know that Parayko's a number one defenseman. Is that fair?
Yeah, watch Dallas. Esa Lindell is Colton Parayko, and Esa Lindell is their second best defenseman. But guess who their guess who their best defenseman is? Miro Heiskanen.
If Colton Parayko is on your top pair, you can win a championship. If Colton Parayko is your number one defenseman, you need everything else on your roster to be really freaking good in order to contend for something that is meaningful. Yep. That doesn't mean you can't, but you better be really good offensively. Like, you got to have the Avs offense to be able to make up for that, if that's what your defense looks like. Also, you need a bunch of tree trunks that are back there, and that's none of which is what the Blues have currently. All right, for Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll hit the rewind and give you a chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash right here on 101 ESPN next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Coming up in about 5 minutes or so, we'll give you a chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash game for the Cardinals versus the Mets. It's the next Bud Bash game of the 2024 season. It includes a limited edition Tony Womack bobblehead. Text in about 5 minutes. The number to do so will be 314-399-9646. And if you are texting number 101 again in a few minutes, we will get you that 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash game. All right, Alex, we're going to finish the show today where we began, which is by talking about the Cardinals and specifically with the offense. I mentioned earlier, the Cardinals as of today are batting .219 as a team. That would be their worst batting average, is their worst batting average at this point in a season in more than 100 years. 1918 was the last time that the Cardinals, through 31 games, had a batting average of .219 or worse.
Think they fired their hitting coach midseason?
I don't know, man. I don't know if they even had a
hitting coach. Is it 1918?
It's bad. There's no way for me to sell you otherwise. The underlying numbers, if you want me to look under the hood and say, hey, BK, is there any nerdy advanced number? No, there's really nothing there. Paul Goldschmidt, if you want to look at the nerdy numbers, he's been better over the last 10 games or so. There's some reason to believe that the same is true for Nolan Gorman. There's not a whole lot there for Nolan Arenado. So it's a mixed bag in terms of whether or not the offense, you should expect them to come out of this. I personally look at the back of the baseball card and say, I think it's going to get better. And that's what gives me confidence compared to a year ago where I couldn't do that with the pitching. I couldn't look at the back of the baseball cards and say, hey, these guys are going to be okay. No, they were going through the downward side of their careers, or it was a bunch of guys that had very little evidence to suggest that they would be good at the big league level, and they never got good at the big league level. Offensively, I think you should be. This is embarrassing, what's happening to them offensively right now. They should not be this bad. And it's why, to me, Alex, the guy that has the most pressure on him over the course of the next week or so is Turner Ward. You're going up against a terrible Chicago White Sox team this weekend. They do not have good pitching, and they are not good at just about anything, really. If your offense can't get it going this weekend, I'm not somebody that calls for the hitting coach to be fired. I think that, generally speaking, it's way overstated, the influence that they have on your roster. But these guys in your lineup are too good to be hitting this poorly for this long. And there will come a point in time where that is probably the only thing that the Cardinals can do to try to artificially boost the offense with just a new message, if nothing else.
Yeah, well, and that's why you ask yourself the question, what else can be done before you get to that point? They've changed the lineup multiple times and putting guys in different positions than they're used to. They've sent players down to AAA to get right. There's nothing else to do other than go to the hitting coach. Here's the part that, and why I would say that the Cardinals aren't going to do it. Who are you going to hire that makes this team better?
I don't know, but can you continue doing this?
No, you can't. But I think the Cardinals would sit there and say what Mo said yesterday about the struggles, that, well, we'll rely on the back of the baseball card and they'll get back to where they are. I mean, we're not talking about Albert Pujols coming through the doors and becoming the new hitting coach, or Yadier Molina coming in and fixing everything. You're going to be talking about firing Turner Ward and bringing up the assistant hitting coach and putting him into a different position. So I'm skeptical that the Cardinals will do it because, like last season when you were bad, they looked at it and said, well, we can't be this bad. It'll get better, and it never did. I think they're going to just keep going down this path until the trade deadline, the offseason, and they say, well, the hitting was bad, so now we got to look at doing something else.
Yeah, I think, though, compared to last year, to BK's point of, you know what, I think you just knew early on that the pitching wasn't there and nobody could fix it. I don't think the offense is completely broken. It looks broken now. I do expect these guys to play better baseball. Now, I don't think the power is going to be there. I don't think Goldie's going to hit 30 home runs. I'm skeptical at 25. Same with Nolan Arenado, which is going to be a significant downfall for this offense from them reaching the ceiling that we thought. But at some point, you just got to make a change. You have to do it. And it is one of those where, there is no science behind it, but we see it. Every sport has it. There's a new coach bump. If it comes down to they just hire the assistant hitting coach, promote him, or promote, the AAA hitting coach, you know what? It's going to be a new coach bump because those players feel guilty. Why? Because they just got Turner Ward fired.
So I know one of the things that has really become a topic of discussion is what the Cardinals are doing against velocity this year, specifically against fastballs. And that is one thing that is a bit of a concern to me. Right now, the Cardinals are batting .243 as a team this season against fastballs. That's bottom 6 in Major League Baseball. They're slugging .351 against fastballs. The only team that's worse against them in terms of their slugging percentage is the Chicago White Sox so far this year.
Oakland's still better.
I don't understand why or how that is happening. Is that an approach issue? Is that something where the timing is off?
That seems like a hitting coach thing.
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. It might be something different for every player, right? For Goldie, it might be he's getting older, and so it's harder to get around on a high velo
But for the
fastball.
entire roster to be that bad?
Exactly. And that's my thing is like, yes, I can explain away some of these things individually, but when up and down your lineup, 7 of the 9 players have underperformed relative to expectations this year, at a certain point, I can no longer say, yeah, individually I can explain all of these. But when you take it in its entirety, you just zoom out 10,000-foot view, this can't happen. This can't happen with this kind of a roster. You are all in on this core. There's no shakeup that can take place. You've already sent down Jordan Walker. You already sent down Victor Scott. You have made it known in the offseason, we're not trading these core pieces for pitching because we believe in these core pieces. We think this is going to be what gets us to the postseason and then gets us through the postseason. We've got slug in this lineup. We've got batting average in this lineup. We've got every diversity of skill set that you could have in this lineup, but none of it's working right now. So why is that? Is it because you bet on the wrong players, which is horrifying if that's the case? Or is it because there's an approach issue? Is it just a slump that you're going to come out of this weekend when you go up against some bad pitching and then boom, you'll take off from there? I don't know. But right now, the Cardinals need to find out. And if it doesn't change in the next week, I think you will have to decide, okay, what was it that Doug Armstrong said, Alex, with Craig Berube? Hey, this was a variable that we can now eliminate.
Yeah.
That's a variable that after the next week or so, if it doesn't get changed, the Cardinals are going to need to eliminate. Unfortunately.
The next variable after that would be the manager, correct?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think the next variable would be them admitting to themselves, we bet on the wrong players. And if they bet on the wrong players, then you go into the offseason, and I have no idea what the plan would be. No idea.
Be a rebuild.
Basically.
I mean, they'd have to tear it down to the studs.
Yeah, it's not something that any of us want to see.
All right, we need the White Sox to be our slump buster.
The problem is we're going to be the White Sox slump buster.
Coming up in 5 minutes, we'll get you to the fast lane. But right now, texter number 101 at 314-399-9646. You are going to win a 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash game for Cardinals versus Mets if you can answer the following question correctly. Earlier today, we mentioned that there was a monster in the closet for somebody in North Carolina. What was that monster? If you get that answer correct, your texter number 101, you are getting that 4-pack of tickets to the Budweiser Bash game. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next.
Mo and his philosophy have to go. Mo and his philosophy has to go. Mo and his philosophy has to go.